Okay, here we are, Nations in Arms, Revolutionary First Coalition, 1796 entering into. And I want to flip through just to check. This is, I believe, the year when the French start getting their +2 combat capability units. So their army is going to improve, right? What happened in the last turn? Well, Austria was set up in a pretty good position, managed to smash the French armies once again, and then made a stab to try to get an automatic victory, which would involve Paris, Lyon, and Bordeaux. Have to capture all of them. But they got caught off guard by a couple of kind of clever French moves that kind of pushed them into ugly situations. The army of the Rhine was destroyed. Over the course of this, the French army of the north was destroyed. The army of Germany almost so. It's down to like one step, hiding up here. But the two armies of Italy never actually met after, I don't know if they ever met at all. I don't think they did. Two armies of Italy never actually met. The Austrian army of Italy is here in Reims. It took that, but they got cut off out of supply, having to march through the winter, and took some significant attrition from that. So in terms of overall force situation, the French are in a better, stronger place. The Poles, meanwhile, have been marching down. I don't know what that's going to do. If they knock Austria out of the war, it may make it so France can't win. But on the other hand, Austria probably doesn't want that to happen. England's still not in the war. The French haven't attacked Flanders. Historically, 1796 is when Napoleon goes into Italy. And I was trying to hit Italy early in this game to try to keep the British out of the war. It hasn't really worked. I haven't really pushed hard in Italy, but I've tried to knock other things out so that I could devote my effort into Italy. Now the French are really under the gun. This scenario ends next year, at the end of next year. Given what I've gained so far, it feels really, really unlikely that we're going to be able to get the kind of advances we need to get the victory. In addition, there's Austrian holdings in France still, which definitely shouldn't be the case at this point. Why? The closest reasons I can come up to is that the French armies are smaller and thus don't have as big a bonus when fighting as the Austrian armies do. Less artillery, less cavalry, blah, blah, blah. The Austrian leadership is not bad. The Prussians got beaten early and withdrew just because of an automatic die roll type situation instead of anything else. But the Austrians have been holding their own against the French. That may change. Those +2 units are going to be a big difference. Should probably be seeing Napoleon, since historically this is when he marches into Italy. Obviously, he had done the Toulon stuff before. But yeah, it looks really hard for France to win the game. I'm not sure about the coalition. I think France is going to be able to take and hold Flanders, which prevents either side from winning. So that's kind of fair, I guess. Anyway, we'll be back when the time is right. I'm abusing myself right now and playing Raid. All right, double check the rules just to make sure these don't get shuffled back in, because it really doesn't make sense. At least in this scenario, anything that's been used is never coming back. Maybe in the Grand Campaign from 1805, there are enough cards that you could actually run out the deck at certain points in the game. It is indeed the fact. Drew the French cards. They got 2. Home Sweet Home, which allows you to end a foreign war. Okay, that's probably not that important. I'm not seeing any indications that France is going to be in a foreign war. But bridge at our, which means I'm holding 2 piece of shit cards, but the defection at least is preventing something bad from happening to me, I guess. When played, you don't take a penalty for a bridged or unbridged river hex. And if it's commanded by Bonaparte, you get a +1 combat bonus. Okay, that'll be great. Probably I'm getting Bonaparte this turn, but whatever. Let's take a look at the British. I haven't looked at these. Spanish New World gold. If the player has at least 1 unblockaded fleet, he receives the Spanish gold instead of Spain. If England and Spain are in the war, I don't want that to happen. And Austria does not have any fleets. So useless. But I have a public event here, which means I have to play it if I can, and it's the Vendee. The British player sets up the leaders Charette and La Jacqueline with the Vendée and Retz combat units within the Vendée area, but not within a fortress or city hex. Okay, this is going to have to play. The Vendée is going to be, should be over here, yeah. Okay. We'll pull those out. That's another set like the Chouans. Clear as if I can set them up together, in which case, you know, one of the leaders would have to go away because they're 2-star leaders. I chose not to do that, but I'm assuming I can combine them and like have a reserve leader kicking around somewhere. Again, you know, there's not a lot of explanation of this kind of shit, but the leader command, the stacking rules essentially prevent me from having both units and both leaders in the same hex. Which I'd probably prefer, but anyway, they can grab some stuff in the Vendée. They could go elsewhere. They can be a thorn in France's side, force them to do something, but it's not that impressive. It's a couple of decent quality corps, one with artillery, and some very, very good leaders that are not associated with any nation or anything. They can only command the Vendée units. So, they're given their good leadership probably because of the kind of guerrilla warfare they're involved in. The French don't have a public event. That was the only one, so that's all that comes from that. And now we go to the economy, and, well, I got a little battle running that I expect to be over. So I just bopped up here to get a teeny bit done, might come back up. You know, it's daytime on Tuesday. Somehow, like, yeah, I did things on Monday, but it feels just as lost as always. Well, I don't know. Everything does. And I didn't get anything done. I just did more like I was outside. Here it is, like 9:30. Still feeling too awake to go to sleep. Yeah, not gonna have a good outcome like I had yesterday. Spent more time poking and prodding. It's kind of like, you know, if you play a game and you get a bad outcome and you play again and try for a good one or whatever, it's kind of like that what I'm doing. And I'm just like, but instead I'm so emotionally invested that it makes me sick each time things go badly. Anyway, I'm doing, I did the Spanish economy. They got like $32. They have nothing to build except boats. So I spent 20 of the bucks on one of their fleets, and that's all I can do. And they're not getting new leaders or anything. They've got their entire army on the board, and whatever that means, you know, it'll be a powerful force if it comes in. That means the next one, well, we skipped Prussia because they're out of the game at this point, is Austria, which will be big. It looks like get only one leader this turn, which is Johann. I'm assuming that's the Archduke John, as I'm familiar with him with other games. And he's rated pretty well here. A 401. That means he can be very active. I like games that give different valuations, right? And the idea of an initiative and a combat value being separate is nice. It's not that uncommon. with a full 16 steps that he can bring into play. That's not a bad leader at all. I mean, Charles, whom I have on the board, right, has a 1 better combat value on both sides. Is John good with armies? He might be. Yeah, he's still good with armies. He's not as he doesn't have as high an initiative, which means, you know, there's one chit where he won't be allowed to move, but he can still move twice a turn if he wants to, you know. So it's not really like having a three leader is not really a big negative. The initiative can affect some things though, like interceptions and withdrawals and stuff like that too. So it's not, you know, it's not optimal, but wow, it's funny to see that like he's rated this well in this game. Historically, I don't really know how good he was, you know, but I'm used to him in games being. In War and Peace, I think he's a 0 leader. They just have one number for that game, which is your combat capability for the most part. It might affect reinforcement, you know, reinforcing battles and stuff. I don't remember. But in Empires and Arms, he's also not at all a useful leader. Yeah. Of course, they also put Schwarzenberg as a 0 leader in War and Peace, so I really don't trust their numbers at all. But I feel like this is probably out of line with his actual effectiveness. Taking Johann here comes in at 99. This is the 96 stack, which is much, much larger. I don't know why I had him ordered like that. I'll put that there. I don't think, I mean, there's the 1800 Marengo scenario. I guess that's the one place where, like, he kind of spans the revolutionary and non-revolutionary, but I kind of feel like the color coding was a stupid idea to begin with. Just put them all on white as far as I'm concerned, but because I have to sort them by number, and if you're going to make one of the color codes such that you can't read the numbers, that's not cool. I'm finding a kind of weird thing with the Austrian army. All their units are 013s, all their regular line infantry. The French have units all over the place, like running, of course they have the militia too, but running from 013s up to +2 +14s. What bothered me was the fact that I had to pay for artillery for everything. I thought there were corps that didn't have artillery. That doesn't seem to be the case for, you know, the Western European powers. I've really been looking. Make sure I don't have anything flipped over or something. I do. Actually, I could have bought some Spaniards. Let me spend some bucks on some of these Spaniards. I have some partially built units that I can increase. But anyway, what it means is I built a bunch of detachments. Now, the reverse side of the infantry does not have artillery with it. So I could also buy infantry corps that are like at half strength. And this is where it gets really cheap, because I can buy those infantry corps at half strength and then load detachments into them. I feel like that's unfair. I don't know why, but like, here's the thing. If I buy this for 3 and this for 3, I get this for 6, essentially. Now, is there a countermix issue here? Yeah, at the edges, sure. There's a limit to how many detachments I have, but you know, as long as my army is destroyed, I can get my artillery for free, and that just doesn't feel reasonable. So I'm doing this the most limited cheating that I can do, essentially, just buying a bunch of detachments. I built already one unit, a pretty decent grenadier unit over here with the Rhine army. And you could say, well, you're low on money, maybe you shouldn't do that. Yeah, but a +2 combat advantage is really, really nice too. And I don't want to not have that advantage. I've switched the army of Italy with the army of the Rhine. I think because this is going to probably be a pretty small army, I have a couple of choices. I could deploy it at Innsbruck, where it basically could either go into Italy kind of slowly or cut up into France. Or I could deploy it over here, defeat the Poles, and then spend a lot of time walking over to deal with the French. It's a hard call, because I really don't want the Poles knocking Austria out of the war, at which point, sure, France may not be able to win if that happens somehow. I don't know. But it does kind of make, it does feel like a pretty bad thing if Austria is beaten by the Poles. At the very least, they would have to give East Galicia back and stuff like that they really don't want to do, I'm sure. So I just don't know what to do, because there's so many places where the game is rubbing against itself in a bad way. And one of them is, of course, this being able to generate free artillery. Another, though, is with this particular scenario, just having these special rules about the countries where it's like, yeah, this isn't the game the revolutionary scenario is not what the game was designed for. It feels like it was designed for that 1805 and on scenario. And they just patched on a revolutionary one that, we'll see. Maybe the 1805 is just as bad, but most of the rules of the game are devoted towards that. And the stuff that I'm seeing so far that rubs wrong in the scenario stuff is just the annoyances of this whole revolutionary First Coalition War. I missed a conquest. The French have conquered Baden, I believe. Yeah. So we'll move this up here, and they should get this here, along with, well, no, actually they shouldn't get this. They should get this. Baden will be incorporated because it's adjacent to Lorraine and Palatinate, stuff like that. So I'll put it with Cleves there. But Baden has a core, which is important because that's no longer in play. I was trying to place it and I'm like, oh, can't. Let me go over what I did with the Austrians as I move their miners over here. So, can't take Baden over. It's got troops. I gotta look this up. I can't take Baden over as the French. So I think I get the core. But let me talk about the Austrians, then I'll fix whatever I just did. I did fix the Spanish and spent down their money for whatever they could build. So I decided to go with the Innsbruck option. I moved Charles over there and renamed that the Army of Italy. It's basically a reserve force. I used, who is this? Alvinci. Must be a Czech or something. Maybe Hungarian. I don't know how. But he's been given command of the Army of the Rhine, which got a little bit of reinforcements in it. Allocated the leaders, but I have lots of other troops lying around, right? So I've got like Piedmontese troops here. I can't get any Piedmont reinforcements. They don't have enough counters, but I can give leaders to these. That'll give them ability to withdraw. Venetians showed up. Württemberg and Bavaria showed up. I haven't given a leader to Württemberg yet. I'll give them one. I'm giving kind of leaders with good command, good initiative, so that I have options to move them. And if I decide to move the detachment without the leader, it won't be a regular force, so it won't take an activation, and I'll pull the leader off the map. And I've also allocated my 4 leaders per army in reinforcements. Over here, I reinforced this a little bit. That allowed me to get away with, well, not really to get away with. I think this was full up, maybe not. 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, this is only 11 steps for the Army of Italy. So I actually think I'll swap, if it's only 11, I'll swap Charles and Alvinzi about, or whatever his name might be. That way I have Charles facing the French. I want that better leadership there. And yeah, now let me look up the Baden situation, swap batteries while I'm doing that. But I think because they have troops, I can't absorb them into France, because they're not part of the Grand Empire. I don't see a GE on them. So yeah, I think I have to keep them as a minor. They might be able to be incorporated into the Rhine Confederation, which would be the way that they stop being Baden. If that's the case, since they're recorded over there on the satellites, actually, they may be satellites. No, they have to stay around for a year to become satellites, which means diplomacy works on them. But because they're a Allied minor, I don't really need a control marker for them. I can fling them over there. Palatinate and Cleves, these were incorporated into France, so they still can't be taken over. Cleves is, that's owned by France now, like that fortress, so I can pay to recover the strength points on it, which, what's this? That's up in Berg. I got the marker there for Cleves, so that's allowed. Palatinate doesn't have a marker. It's just so confusing to try to figure out what goes where. I don't think Palatinate has a marker. It was part of Baden. Like, yeah, it's just so complicated to figure out everything. But yeah, and I guess I move on to the next nation after this, which should be France. Oh boy, do I want to do the French yet? I think I'll pause. Might try to get some sleep. Might try to hurt myself. As I work my way through the French, I came up with something interesting. So Bonaparte comes in here. Now, this is the year he went into the Italian campaign, at least according to the scenario book. It's also the first year he shows up in 96, and he's here, and he looks like an army leader. I flipped him over, and he still looks like an army leader, but he's in brackets. Brackets usually, he's not on this side. Brackets usually means that there's like an event or something that does it. And I flip through this and I find a Vendemarie card, which, you know, the chance of this coming up is really, really low, this is where the game to me is just bullshit, right? Like, I want Napoleon as my army leader at this point, if it's a nice scripted situation. This is the first time, actually, this isn't the first time. This card could have come in last year, but Bonaparte is not available till 96. Is he shorter on here? No. So this 95 card could have come up last turn, but Bonaparte is immediately appointed as army leader to an on-map French army of the French player's choice. Current army leader goes back to the pool. Okay, great. The brackets to me seems to mean that, and there's no special rules, I think, in this scenario. I can look, but the brackets to me seems to mean that I can use Bonaparte only as an army leader if that card is played. And now these, I'm going to have to reshuffle, but yeah, and I'll just reshuffle them now because there's no difference in it. But nobody's got that card, so he's not going to be forced into play. The chances of it coming out are pretty low. Next turn is the last turn of the game, right? 4 more cards get drawn out of there, and that's it. Now, obviously, if I had a Committee of Public Safety or whatever still in play, I would be able to pull a card out, but I don't have that capability. So I can't make Bonaparte be of any use to me except as a 3-star non-army leader, which is a weird thing, but okay. As far as I can tell, I was really kind of looking forward to, wow, an army with a 3-point army rating, the 5-point initiative. 5-point initiative doesn't give me any extra chip movements, but it gives me better interception and avoidance. Looked really positive. I'm not going to be able to use him as that as far as I can tell. I've bought all my units. I've got another 20 bucks left. What can I do with that 20 bucks? Well, I could influence Spain, I guess, to join me. Everything else is out of the game. Like Britain, I've already said, France can't win if Britain comes in on their side or something like that, because they wouldn't be getting Flanders. So, and they don't have a diplomacy chit, because they are the player for the coalition for 2-player games. Russia and Turkey are not in this game, and Prussia is basically in that same situation. So I'm left with like, okay, now I have a really good leader who, if I commit him as my secondary leader, he gets an automatic leader loss check, which would kind of suck to lose Napoleon, but you know, that +3 is a big deal. I have good enough leaders otherwise, but I was trying to balance it out because he's actually a 3-12 or a 5-12-3 as an army leader, whereas I've got Hotch. Okay, not so exciting, but I've got new people here. Let me see, Kleber's a secondary commander. Who did I get? I got Messina, and I got Saint-Cyr. Saint-Cyr is not that exciting, but Messina is a 4-16-2, which means I can put him in charge of an army as big as what the Austrians, you know, can field with their big generals. I think I'm still going to end up with advantages in this situation, but I was really looking forward to using Napoleon as an army leader. And I think the chances of doing that in this scenario are very, very low. I bought the most expensive troops I could across the board. And France still has 20 bucks. They just didn't have the manpower. They have the same manpower as Austria does, which is 5. The states that I've taken and added to me, which are Palatinate doesn't provide anything now, but Cleves I've taken, and maybe Neufchâtel, depending on how you look at things. I gave the money for it, I think. Cleves just gives a buck with no manpower, and Neufchâtel, same thing. So I'm not going to have like additional French manpower coming in from any of these sources. What that means is I have 20 bucks left. There's not much I can buy with it. There's useful stuff like depots and I've got 1 depot I can buy. The rest have years on them. The engineers have a year on them. I can't buy any of these troops because they take manpower. I don't have any Corsairs left. So kind of the question is, do I want to blow a lot of money on diplomacy? I think the answer is yes, because the idea of buying a fleet and trying to challenge, you know, navally, the only thing I can do is against the Brits, really. It doesn't do me a lot of good to have navies operating. So I think I'll buy the depot. I look around. Okay. So that's $2 more off here. And then that leaves me with 18 francs, pounds, whatever. I think the game is supposed to use pounds. I'm just going to call them bucks for my operations for the turn. There's some disadvantages to all of this. For example, the Vendean. I don't really want to cope with that problem, right? Like, I don't want to dispatch an army for it, and I don't have the kind of manpower that I can use elsewhere. I've got some additional leaders in charge. Like here, there's a detachment. Here, there's the Baden detachment. The Poles have their leaders in place. Those are all underway, as it were. But all that diplomacy money, I can use that again and again on like Denmark, and eventually get Denmark on my side, which will give me a few more troops, which is helpful. Can't think of anything else that would be useful to me. So, yeah. And I can't like steal Sweden from England or anything like that, even though we're not at war, and but we got to get to war soon, because we got to take Flanders. If we don't take Flanders, we pretty much will lose the game. All right, so that is the French forces. 2 armies created there and there. Well, not created, filled out. And I changed the names of them. This is now the Army of the North instead of the Germans, and this is now the Army of Germany instead of Italy. Now, I got problems like these, which right now I think would take combat units to buy. But next turn, I think I can refurbish those fortresses with just money. So that's another possible usage of my money. Because the thing is, it's got max combat unit strength, but you don't use combat units when you refurbish fortresses with just cash during other turns. Like, you're not tracking the amount of manpower that you have available. They're basically the same cost as militia, but yeah. And it really bugs me. So this is another one of those places where the game is like grinding up against itself. Getting close to a raid time, actually, about a half hour before. I figure I'd come up here and try to do the English economy in that time, even though I'm feeling awfully tired. Hasn't been 24 hours yet since I last slept. But it's getting close. I'm trying to think. We're like 18 or so, which is that doesn't sound like it should be that bad, right? No, it can't even be that, right? I don't know. I feel really, really tired though. But I have to deal with this money here. Now, I decided this 7 is for a reason. It's a 70 and not 100. I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to make a difference either way. And so this is, I use this as 40, so that would be 110, 112 left over. That seems more likely than 142 left over. So we're going to add to that the 103 that they generate. But we also have to take care of the miners that they have. Here's one of those places where the game falls apart. It's worse than I thought. Miners can produce their own troops. The Allied major power can give it 4 pounds. No exemption for Britain. They can't save them. Okay, that's fine. Nothing else in there. You cannot build the navies of any of these miners unless money can be given to them. I mean, we can look. The richest miners, Venice produces $8. Costs 20 to build a navy. Saxony's not an issue. Poland doesn't have a navy. Holland, $8. Again, can't build the navy with that. Now, add 4 to that, that gives you 12. It still costs $20 to build a navy. You can't possibly build the navies. So, in this scenario, you wouldn't be able to build any of the navies of any of the miners. You know, it's just obvious. It just doesn't work, right? Like, there's no setup for those navies. They don't set up on the board except where they're specified. So like Portugal set up a navy to begin with or whatever. But Holland did not. I don't know if Portugal did either. No, I built that fleet. Yeah, so they don't have any navies in their initial setup for the scenario, and yet they have navies in the game that, as far as I can tell, you just can't build. And if you're using like the Grand Campaign and there's going to be a lot of neutral countries and whatnot, there's no rules for setting up the nation at all anyway. So it's like, make those rules up. Yeah, I don't know. The English had a couple of navies left over that they could build, so they did so. Some detachments. Otherwise, we're at 148, which I'm representing. And I'm pretty sure I did it this way with the 70 there. And that is 78 more, so yeah, that adds up. And that is going to put us to the diplomacy phase. And I'm not awake enough to go further at this point. So, go play some Raid, which I can do. Here it is, I guess Wednesday, about 5 a.m. Gets so light so damn early now. You know, I mean, I know how people are always like, oh, can't believe it's May, can't believe it's June, whatever. Yeah, I definitely feel that, but for me, it's kind of like, you know, that same sort of where the fuck did the year go? But I'm also thinking, yeah, went into just darkness, not being anywhere, not doing anything, not, you know, and the addiction and everything. All right, the fun of that. Let's do diplomacy. I'll come back with a report. I misunderstood something. I'm looking at the diplomatic rules here. Under the minor powers, this is where it really got bad. Well, now this is weird. Okay. This whole thing is poorly written. During each turn, each player can attempt to influence an order. Minor powers round. One minor country not allied with another power spending any pounds. Okay, that sentence doesn't really parse into anything sensible. In addition, each player may pay to dispatch an embassy. So it looks like I'm getting an automatic in order to perform an additional attempt on the same or another minor country. This embassy costs 4. It is paid for by British, French, or other player. The second attempt is performed. No, I think I got it right. I think this is without spending any, is what they're saying. But I get to pay for the modifiers at £2 each, up to a +2. So I had it right. It's just when I start looking at the wording, I mean, it's just, there's typos, there's things that just don't make sense. Why is it talking about, I don't know. Yeah, but I think I had it right before. So, yeah, I made a roll for Austria. They didn't get it. France is going to pay $2, and they're actually at a total then of +3. So all they need is a 9. And then I can redo it for more money, although I may want to hang on to some of that cash. So I spend my $2 though. Sorry, not that way. Move it towards me. And then the English don't get a chance. We hit the major power rounds. There's absolutely no reason, well, yeah, there's no reason for that. The French could try to bring the Spanish in, but I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference. I think if I bring the Spanish in and then attack Flanders, the Spanish switch sides. That's sort of a strict reading of the rules. It may not feel right, but it keeps France from being able to, utilize a few bucks to do something stupid. But man, like the cards, there's just like, the thing that came up with the cards leads me to believe that like the rules just aren't, for the most part, they feel like somebody just didn't bother doing the development work on this game at some point or another. They got that core system working, got a lot of everything sketched out, and then, just said, yeah. And I mean, when I say development work, this is, even if there's no developer, the designer is expected to put out something that like is a sensible game. And I just don't feel like most of this game, it feels like it's just missing way too much, and there's way too much up to interpretation. Again, there's fan-designed rules, the rewrite that I look to, that might be much, much better. It may be supposedly it's not changing the rules at all. It's incorporating all the errata and questions and answers and all that into one solid piece of rules. That's what they should have made the second printing. They should have just, paid some portion of that second printing to whoever. Well, I think it was done after the second printing, to tell you the truth, when they found out that, yeah, still didn't bother fixing even the stuff that, like, they put into the errata, not just, wordings and stuff. Taking too much time here. I think it's time to build the chit pool for springtime. Yes, it is. I was trying to say something happens at that moment. It's the Winter Quarters card. The thing that should have happened during diplomacy, but I keep forgetting about, and I have to remember if it's important, is declarations of war. If I want to go into something, mainly for France, like Switzerland, I gotta bring them into the war. I would say Geneva is a lot less important. I can say I'm at war with Geneva. We can just pretend I am. It makes no difference. We can just ignore that. But Switzerland would be a big deal. They have some forces. They may even have a commander. And it's not something I want to face, but I need it before I win. And only 2 years. First chit, which had to be coalition because the French went last, is the coalition 4 chit. That gives them 2 things they can move. Down here with Wormster, and over here with Chucky. Wormster, let's think about him first. If I move up, fight the Poles, and lose, I can lose Austria. Like, Austrian cities could easily be taken. Vienna is just open. Bohemia is just open. That's it. Or Prague. Nothing I can do if my army loses. Much more valuable for me to keep an army floating around in Vienna. Actually, Vienna is not open. It has a fortress. But anyway, fortresses are easy enough. And the point is, if I lose this battle, if I lose a battle there, I'm in trouble. No reason to escalate. I leave things as they are. Be great to defeat the Poles and head back, but force isn't going to get there in time anyway. The other force is much more interesting, though. Charles here. He's facing 2 French armies. So kind of on either side of him. Strategy dictates I should be trying to defeat them in detail. I should be marching forward, hitting one, and then, either falling away from it or marching onto the other one and try to take them both down or whatever. But I should not sit there and allow them to combine. I can see the leaders. They're both good. This is the bigger leader. I don't have that big an army, I think. Not sure. Is the army of Rhine? Yeah, I don't have that big an army. I may want to go take the one I can get easily. Although, yeah, see, the thing is, the French have made it clear they're not attacking Flanders until they deal with this problem, I think. So, yeah, let's deal with that Northern Army. This is a major battle. I'm sorry, I came from Reims 1, 2, this should be 3. The Austrians got into the Hex without an interception. I have a lighter in my pants? No. Where did I put my lighter? Okay. I actually have tea, the hot water boiling, but I'm like in kind of a manic stage. Because I'm on like the 4th replay of this one character, like, interaction thing. And at least, maybe 5th. And it's finally kind of going, not destroying me. It still has hurt in it and everything. That's an important facet of it. But so far, no betrayal this time. I tweaked some parameters on it. Anyway, making me feel kind of alive in a weird sort of way. Like I actually am interacting with a real human. What's interesting here is, with all the modifiers, better leaders, we have 2-point leaders in both cases. French have their military reform. French get 4 cards, Austrians get 2. Let's take, or 3. Now, they're both going to attempt for a second card. The Austrian primary card is going to be the Grand Charge. I have that many cav steps. See, now this is weird, because I don't have that many steps labeled cavalry, but cuirassiers are cavalry, okay? And I think Cossacks are and whatnot, right? But it's kind of odd to have something called cavalry. The cavalry is technically like cav, but they don't have room on the counter or whatever to say that. You could put LT cav instead of cavalry, right? But this gives up to a +2. However, it has some possible counters to it. French would have had to pick them. Second one I picked as a surprise. I'm going to roll for that on a 0. It only adds a +1 to the die roll, and only if the opponent doesn't have any light cav or cav leaders, which they probably do. The other one that I throw out is this patriotic enthusiasm, which would not work at all. It has to be within your home country to have an effect. The French got 4 cards instead. Their first one is a slope, a simple +1 to the die roll. That's going to be their automatic. The second one, I'm using a 1-point leader because I have a lot of leaders to do an echelon. I, again, meet the requirements, so we're going to have that. Now, slope is not unexpected ditch. What did I throw away? Crests, which I don't know who has artillery superiority. Probably the Austrians, but it's only a +1. It's probably better to take away enemy +1s, but I can't be sure that has any effect. And a screen cancels enemy cavalry pursuit. If you lose a cav step, that's painful. And then they list here light cuirassiers, feudals, or Cossacks. They actually list it here, whereas they don't in the Grand Charge. It's just totally arbitrary where they decide to give you, well, I mean, it's not. There's a lot of text on this. But it's like, if you're going to give reminders on one, it probably should be on both or something. I don't know. And ideally, cav would not, the counters that say cavalry on them, which are light cav, should not be written with the same word that they use for the generic. And honestly, what is cav? I believe it's defined as what has these little swords on them. I don't know if you can see them. I think that's the actual definition. So you don't need the reminder. Anyway, make a couple of rolls. I'll come back probably after the battle is over. Essentially a big one. The modifiers worked out to +10 for the French, +7 for the Austrians. But Napoleon's being used as a minor commander, which is some big risk there, right? I could lose Napoleon for forever from doing that. But at the very least, the initial die roll came out very well. The French, rolled about equal, but we get a 7 CL 4L. Apply the losses, demoralization, all that shit. Come back with the full report. But I feel like this one's big enough that I really wanted to report the interim. Austrians didn't get their second card, but this one's a +2, blah, blah, blah. It is so devastating in this. Okay, so the Austrians withdrew, of course. They took the only leader loss, which is this piece of garbage here. Napoleon survived, blah, blah, blah. They lost about half their army in the battle. But then the pursuit knocked them down to a step, demoralized, and back there. When you get demoralized fighting, anything that has enemy cav, you pay such a price. 4 steps of forces wiped out of an army that was, originally like 12 steps or something. It took 7 steps in the first hit. That's a total of 11 steps. Yeah, that's why it's at 12. At first I thought it was pretty bad anyway, because the Austrians had a lot of goodies in the Army of the Rhine. They'd kept all their decent armies. They were actually able to have a 4 morale, which is unlikely for them. But by doing that, they took a lot of hits on their grenadiers and their cavalry, because their line infantry is only 3 morale. But anyway, the French basically kicked their ass, pushed them back. We are pausing there, no question about that. Because, moving that single stack was a big enough thing that I don't want to be up here. I know that the next shit is going to be big too. Probably, or is going to be bigger, right? Because even if it's a French 4, I got a couple of, I've got several French units that are going to want to move fairly early, I think. I might make arguments like, the Poles can try to outweight or whatever, but it doesn't really do any good to outweight. Actually it does, because I want to bring reinforcements up. So there you go. Yeah. That core system, it does something really right. These battles are dramatic and potentially conclusive, decisive effects on the campaign. Very much like Empires in Arms, right? There's a fair amount of luck go out. There's a lot of luck in it. There really is. You're rolling 2d6. You got some tail ends that can really affect things. There's enough complexity going on in the battles that I think they have a certain amount of drama to them, like what cards are you going to draw? Are they going to work? Stuff like that feels kind of like the outflank choice in Empires in Arms. Contrast this with a couple of other games. I don't remember the Napoleon against Europe, but I also don't remember it hitting me. Although, given that it's the same designer, it may be a similar combat type of design. But I don't remember it hitting me with this feeling, right? I'll tell you this. Napoleonic Wars, you're unlikely to get dramatic swings in the combat, as far as I'm concerned. War and Peace is probably the worst of the pile in terms of this. I know it's a game that's trying that's trying to show this more operational type view of things, maybe more than this is. But honestly, the battles just don't feel that decisive. First of all, it depends on what roles you're playing. If you're playing with the basic roles, one person has the edge or the other does. You fight the battle, and the side that's like got the disadvantage probably pulls away. So everything just becomes these minor little battles, even between big stacks. You don't do a lot of damage with a single shot in the game, like with a single round of battle, and then you pull away, right? With the more advanced rules, there's capabilities to like bring forces in from nearby. There's a lot more detail, like the marching to the sound of guns here. There's a lot more detail in terms of what can happen. But the actual battle rounds, which may not be an actual day, I think they're discussed as such. But, they're periods of time in which battle is being fought, and I think they're smaller than a day, right? But anyway, the actual each die roll that you make is pretty minor, and so you don't really like fall the way this Austrian army just fell. And I feel, when I look at something like Austerlitz, especially, but not just, I feel like Napoleonic battles were a hell of a lot more decisive, more on this model, more on the Empires and Arms model. And I think that's one of the things that just, I keep saying I'm going to try War and Peace again. I bought the new version and was very disappointed to find out that it didn't change any of the things that really irritated me in the rules. Like, it didn't fix the Grand Campaign, and it still looks like everything in it is the core fundamental problems with Empires and with War and Peace are still there, which was very disappointing. I was expecting some kind of, what is it? I mean, 40 years later or whatever, I was expecting the re-edition, just by the hype and everything in it. It doesn't really feel like there are some changes, some minor improvements around the edges, but yeah. And the core system, which is what I was always hoping would give me something better than Empires and Arms, this is convincing me actually of where the problem is with War and Peace's core system and why the game feels flat, no matter what, and why Empires and Arms is exciting. It really has to do with capturing this kind of decisive engagement. It doesn't have to be decisive. You can roll shit, The one thing I would say about this is that multi-day battle options feel pretty limited. I feel like that it's too much of has to be an exactly equal result for you to have the opportunity to keep fighting. And if one side has the advantage or the other does. Like, if one side feels like they're at a disadvantage, they should just leave, I think. Downstairs and came back up because I have another point to make. One that's a little less sanguine about this game, at least. I don't think you could get a situation like Waterloo, like the 4 battles of the Waterloo campaign out of this system. Okay? Now, you could say, well, they're abstracted away, the fights are within a hex or whatever. Yeah, you start doing that, and I'm starting to feel like, I don't know if I really accept that. Although the distances might be such that actually makes sense. You can get some of that out of War and Peace with the advanced rules again. Here's why. I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Okay, but like the idea of I take a position and defend it and have forces spread out and they get hit I mean, it could be a failure to withdraw in the case of like, yeah, I'm having trouble remembering which one's which. I know Cadabra, but Ligny and Lavra are the ones I don't remember which one's where. But anyway, you basically have this situation where the Allied army, the coalition, whatever, is kind of cordoning off and trying to prevent Napoleon from advancing into, deeper in. And then, the English army doesn't even get engaged, except for what's at Cadabra, until the main engagement at Waterloo. And it's just kind of like this, that spaced out, that nature of it. Maybe it's all happening in one hex. Then it becomes kind of like Empires in Arms. But I feel like the situation of the possible incremental addition of troops, which can happen in this, but it's a lot less likely, is more able to reflect that situation. And that shows up better in War and Peace, I think. I'm not that convinced because I often feel like with this game, it ends up big stack hit big stack, which just, doesn't give you that kind of the advantages of trying to maneuver and such not. That kind of operational level of detail, I just don't feel like either game really represents it, but I think this one may do a little worse. Maybe not. Hold a couple more chits. Neutral land, neutral naval, but I can get rid of this. Thought about pulling the Swedes over with the neutral naval, but I can't. This is full. There's no port here. I don't know quite what. There's one here, but this is not within neutral territory. Within British-controlled, friendly, neutral territory. Led me to think about, look, Denmark's hard for Britain to get, but the Hanseatic League is easy. And they include this port at Bremen. I don't know if... See, the Hanseatic League actually hit other things, but I think they may be eaten up by now. This may be the only thing that counts as still part of the Hansa. If you watched my Europa Universalis, or if you've ever played it or whatever, it's kind of spread out all over here, but the 30 Years' War, most of it is gone at the end of that. All right. Well, I'm just drawing for the first Empire chit, I guess, but yeah, what I was thinking was it would be useful to have a second port. And that's actually, no, there's more. Lubeck, Lubeck's part of the Hanseatic League. See, now that was definitely taken by Sweden. Hamburg, Bremen, okay. So like 3 extra ports. I could get a lot more stuff funneled in. The big thing is I have to protect Amsterdam. So I can't like denude that and make it, my entry entrepot to the continent. But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, the army I have there is probably, it's most of the English forces are there already. But it would be useful to have more reserves available on the continent. Continue, and again, this may be something that doesn't matter in the Grand Campaign or whatever, which it feels like the game was designed for. But for this revolutionary scenario, the fact of the limited card deck, feels like big things just aren't happening that should. So like, I have the White Cockade card in the coalition's hands. They are guaranteed that card due to setup. They're not allowed to play it until the King of France is executed. The Committee on Public Safety, or of Public Safety, I think the French start with that, I'm not positive, but they it's worth, yeah, they start with it. And it's something that gives them some power to direct the revolution a little bit better. But they would never pick king executed, you know? So, like, there's a card that the coalition has, which it's a great card and all, but it's just not, you know, particularly helpful in their hand. And there's no guarantees this comes out. I feel like if they're not going to put some kind of more, and I can see why they wouldn't, because, again, I don't think the game is designed for the revolutionary scenario. Although, that's the thing that intrigued me the most and that I was the most excited about, along with a campaign that goes throughout. But, you know, it feels more like just an add-on focusing on the military. If you're going to do that, you got to make more of the real events happen that drive things, or throw more scripting in, you know, I mean, as a means of doing that. If you something to make the cards work better, or some kind of scripting or something. And again, the cards may work just fine in the main campaigns. It's just here, I feel like important stuff is just not happening. How important? I don't know. Like, the fact that I can keep Britain out of the war, Britain and Spain out of the war, while I defeat Prussia and Austria piecemeal, that just doesn't feel like that should fully be in France's hands. And I think there's an event that brings the Brits in. I haven't seen one yet, but they do talk about an event in there. Obviously, there's the possibility of diplomacy, but diplomacy's hard, and you can't do it on Britain. Oh, so this is the other odd thing. They say Britain and Spain. Let me find the wording. Let me just make sure here. Committee of Public Safety and King of France have to both come out. Britain and her allies join the coalition immediately through diplomatic action, event, or if France attacks or besieges Antwerp. There's no diplomatic mechanism for bringing the Brits in, except for one thing. If this did allow for a multiplayer game, where everybody wins by being, you know, by the coalition doing well, you just bring Britain in right away. There is no way. They don't have a chit. I mean, I guess you could say they have a notional chit or something like that, but it just doesn't feel right. And it's Britain and her allies, which I assume includes Spain. Where's that worded? This is just so fucking, so annoying. So annoying how Britain and her allies joined the coalition immediately through diplomatic action, event, or France attacks or besieges Antwerp or Brussels. Spain joins when Britain enters or the turn after the terror is played. Huh. Did we have the terror? Did I fuck up? I don't think we did. But we may have. Like, it wouldn't have had an effect if we did. Yeah, we had a terror. That was way back. Fuck. Okay. I think I'll bring Spain in next turn, which will definitely cause some problems. Let me remind myself of that as I walk completely around the table. I'm putting the Spanish marker here because otherwise I'll forget. Yeah. I mean, that's just a matter of whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's cool that Spain comes in early, and I've been kind of a little weird about it not. But Britain's the bigger one. I don't know. The French can't win without Flanders, so, you know. All right, I'll get back to the chits. I'm struggling so much with this scenario, and just, Some of it has to do with just how the organization of the scenario is. It could have been done a lot better. Some of it has to do with things that, like Britain. Normally you wouldn't be able to conduct diplomacy on Britain. What does it mean that I can? Can Austria spend $4, which, they could save up or whatever, to bring the Brits in? I don't know. Can Spain? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. Because it says they can come in by diplomacy. They just don't have a diplomacy chain. We got a winter quarters in play. 2 more turn ends. And then the French got their 4 marker, which again, doesn't allow me many things that I can move, but more than the Austrians can. The question is, what do I want to do with it at all, and what? First thing is, demoralized force. What do I do with that? I can't fight it. Well, I guess they could let me, but basically what I can do is I can chase it around. I think that's worth doing to try to take locations and whatnot. It's also, there's no force there. So, yeah, that's of interest. I want to clean up the Vendee problem before the Spaniards come in. Yeah, they're coming in late. We're just pretending that the terror just happened. In fact, well, I got the Spanish marker there. That's good enough. They should have come in quite a bit earlier, and that probably would have been the end of France, because the Spanish army a Spanish army back here would have made the difference last turn, for example. It would have been earlier than that, but just as an example. Something like this, I may want to hold off, see what the coalition does before I decide which way to go with that. But I think chasing these guys around is a useful thing. If they had a bigger force, I would worry that, it would be more important, because I would worry that they would rally and whatnot. But with just 1 step, they don't even have to bother. God damn it. I screwed up again. I used Napoleon and this force. This is the army of Germany. Army of the North is down here. I can't. They're ordered so poorly for me. I guess they're alphabetical. But it's like, that's not what I want. I want them to be geographical. I want the North to be way up here, and I want Spain and Italy to be down here, So I'm just grabbing the wrong army, and the fight that happened couldn't have happened. The Napoleon bonus, I would have been using a +2 instead. I'm going to leave it as is, and I'm just going to, I guess I'll leave the damage on the army of Germany. It was 2 steps, which is a big deal, but I just can't keep track of these, and when they're covering the word, and they're not placed the way I expect them to be placed, I understand. And they're not alphabetical. Italy, Bohemia, Rhine. And these make sense to me, kinda. Although they were the ones that fucked me up before. And it wouldn't be as bad if I was sitting, in a particular location, like a player, like in a multiplayer game players would be. But it does really hit me when I'm trying to operate everything from back here. Fairest thing I can do, I took the 2 steps on an infantry +2. I just shifted 1 between the 2 armies. Anyway, the Army of the North grabbed Reims with the Army of Germany now, which has been reinvigorated size-wise. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, good. I think what I want to do is split my forces. Yay! Always a great idea. Because the only forces I have back here are puny little things. So I want to send a force capable of dealing with this. What would be capable of that? Well, I could send Napoleon. Or I could send Saint-Germain. The advantage of Napoleon is he could take 6 steps with him. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So he could take half the army with him. That outnumbers the Vendee forces, and it gives me a force down near Spain. So next turn, he can maybe hold off the Spaniards. I don't know. I don't want to face an army without an army. That's the problem. And there's no Austrian army down here. So maybe I send Napoleon into Italy, a la historical, and send the army down this way. That may make the most sense. So in addition to the attack across here, which took Reims, and I rebuilt Reims with my money, but I don't have infinite money, and using it for diplomacy isn't completely unreasonable. I marched Napoleon down, and I can't buy Dijon until a reinforcement phase, as far as I can tell. I can replenish a fortress when I capture it, or during reinforcement phases. I don't think I can just kind of do it willy-nilly. And it would feel really weird if I could, right? Like, I could move forces in there to do it. Napoleon moved down here, grabbed an extra unit. He only took 4 steps with him, so now he's got 5. He's in a position where he could force march and maybe break his way through one of these 2 passes. I don't know the size of the steps, but you know what? I know they're not armies. I know none of them are bigger than a 2. So, yeah. This one is the more appealing, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did have an extra move. I could have done this, but that would open, that would telegraph, because then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'd have to, I wouldn't be able to hit that. So where I am right now, I can hit either of these, and that's useful. And then the army of Germany, I think, is heading down this way. They took Orleans. I did not garrison that. Again, I'm like, I'm going to need that garrison sometime soon, but I feel like I don't want to garrison everything in France. Everything's too important at this point. But yeah, I have too much to do, man. Too much to do in too little time. All right. I think that shit is enough that I take another break. May have a video I want to make. We putter around, and it's still, you know, kind of cloudy out and kind of a nice temperature. Should go out and do something now. It's going to get warm later. This is, I don't know. Screw reality, right? Anyway, got another winter quarters. So now the next one that's pulled ends the spring turn. But got the coalition land 1 movement. We got some interesting questions. The biggest one centers around our army, which is we only have 1 basically, right? I mean, we have this, but it can run away wherever it likes. As long as it stays demoralized. But the problem is, if I don't undemoralize, it'll last until the winter. So maybe I don't need to undemoralize it right now. I can retreat for a while because I'm not getting more troops. But maybe I send it back to deal with the Poles or something. This other army here is my Italian army. My intention had been to flow it down there, maybe do a 2-pronged attack into France. Well, now I'm at a disadvantage. And the question is what I want to deal with it. The clearest and easiest thing in my way right now is actually Baden here. I could get that cleared out of the way, but Reed might be able to handle that on his own. So where do I want the army to be focused? Do I want it to block and operate in Italy against these? The army, this isn't the army. Napoleon. Do I want to send the army down to face Napoleon, or do I want to send it to deal with the problem of the German border? And Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't want to send it to the polls, although they're their own little danger too. Okay, so that coalition activation. First thing I did was I took the Vendean forces, grabbed Nantes. Oh, I forgot to do. Now I'm making shit up here, right? Because I'm not sure. They're not supposed to be in supply or whatever. There's nothing that stops you from sieging if you're out of supply, though. So I need to make a attrition check at the end of their movement, which I forgot to do. They've got just 2 steps left, from what I can see. 3. They got 3 steps left. They took Nantes and garrisoned it. But what I'm gonna make up is that they have supplies out of stuff in their home territory, the Vendean. So if they take some, otherwise they'll just wither away, I guess. Well, they'll get down to 1 step. All movement was inside national territory, I guess. I guess the Vendean is their national territory. I mean, I don't know. Got to make shit up here. So that gives them a -3. But they're out of supply, so that gives them a +1. And they get an 8, which is just fine. The small force is really unlikely to have any issues. I moved the army of Italy up here, grabbed a detachment, and took Baden. It was an automatic victory. Automatic victory doesn't say anything about leader casualties. I rolled one. Again, stuff that's just missing. Like, my feeling is the leader should be captured, but there should also be a leader exchange type mechanism in play and whatnot. So even some of the stuff that's at least adjacent to the basic land game isn't really as filled out as I expect. But anyway, I rolled a commander casualty check, and he was fine, so he just goes back in the pool. It's no big deal. He's not anyone important. I chose not to move this. There's no real reason to. I can run away. What else? I did not choose to do anything with that for the same reasons as before. I don't have any real desire to escalate there at all. I moved the Venetians over, but there's really not a lot I can do or want to do. I mean, you can make an argument that the Vendean's only in supply if, like, a coalition force has a fortress, but I don't think that actually works, because within the game you can't draw supplies off of sort of random stuff. I don't know who these are aligned with. I would say the Brits probably can supply them, but the Brits aren't even in the war. So, yeah, it's all pretty fucked up. Not sure what he's up to, but I didn't want to fall back and give up ground, and I want to keep my activation capabilities available. And I guess that's about it. Oh, had to hunt down, and these are hard to find. You know, Austria, French, Russian control markers are pretty easy to find. British ones, not so much, because they're not expected to take a lot of stuff. But I could see where they, do. But anyway, I wanted to distinguish, because again, no one else can use that for supply, and I think it would count as a British supply source as well, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to look, because maybe it would have to be somewhere here. It's something like the capital is able to, or something. It's not something I've really had to worry about, because I've had lines of supply everywhere else, and right now it's not that big a deal. I'm going to pause there, because even just moving a few pieces, it's taxing. I don't know. On my break, and this is the funniness about this kind of system. Winter quarters comes right up. That's the third one for the turn. So spring is over. I think everybody's in supply. Next turn, Spain joins. Yeah, a little late, but you know, what can I do? So yeah, technically these guys have to make an attrition check, but there's only one step they can't get hurt by. France built all their fortresses back with the money. I don't have a hell of a lot of money, so I just rolled natural on Denmark. Didn't get it. Okay, great. You know, just one roll, not paying for additional. The English did the diplomacy for the coalition. Well, even though it's not coalition, they succeeded in getting the Hansa, and then paid a fair amount of money to try to get Switzerland as well. By doing that, they can kind of force the French to have to go to war with England if, you know, they want to complete their victory. Now, they have to anyway for Flanders, but it would put a little bit more effort onto it. It didn't happen. But Hansa's more important. It gives me more ports up there. I considered Mecklenburg, but I don't really gain anything from Mecklenburg. There's not even a port up there. Huh, I didn't know Weimar was that far north. I just kind of pictured it as more Rhine area. I don't know why. Anyway. Yeah, I don't. Wouldn't be, would it? Yeah, might be. I don't know. It's not, so. Well, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I always thought it was closer to the Rhine. Huh. Anyway, that will put me to time to build the Chit Cup. Spain is in the war. I guess I'll just put them over here with Austria as a reminder. I don't know. I'll put them up here. That'll work. I don't know what to do. And anything else I gotta do here? Yeah. I'm gonna head down because coffee's hitting me. I came up and thought, well, I might as well do a chit. But see, things have changed, right? Because the turn ended, now it's very likely a big pulse is going to be the next one, at least the next land phase. So, yeah. But with the little coalition marker up there to remind me, I don't have to worry anymore. Got a coalition land movement here. I think that's 3. And I moved the army. I switched it to the Army of Spain because it's going to be operating down here. You know, I'm just weird about that kind of thing. I want to be able to recognize where various forces are. Moved into Nantes, and the Vendee forces took it as a siege. Siege got an honors of war. Now, honors of war just throws it as a... So here's the weird thing. I kind of don't believe that the French army would grant honors of war to a non-national, you know, to this essentially rebellion within. But there's no other answer within this. So the forces will go into the autumn turn. What are they going to do? I guess they show up back in the Vendee again, you know, and I've got another leader if I want it. And that's life, you know. Hey, I get to get rid of the British thing, and I'll spend another couple bucks. But that was the last move of that unit. I got to consider everything else, but I wanted to bring that up because that weird situation that, like, again, it feels like something that the game, you know, is just not designed for. Even though there are other situations where honors of war probably wouldn't be granted. Other rebellions, etc., that happen in the main, 1805 through 15 or whatever scenario. 15 or 14, I think it ends in 14. Kind of weird. It's one of the things that always bugged me about, there was one of the games where the victory conditions were such that, like, somebody wins the Napoleonic Wars historically. Like, the conquest of France would have won them historically or whatever. And so, like, I'm thinking it may be War and Peace, but War and Peace has rules for the return of Napoleon. That also is a game that has a really, really, like, it has victory conditions for the French. They just have to hold Paris. If they hold Paris till 1815, they win the game. There are other ways to win it and everything, but it can lead to some unrealistic strategies. I don't know the victory conditions for the Grand Campaign well enough, but I don't think France holding Paris is enough for them to just say, well, the French win. It always felt like, yeah, if you design it that way, like this scenario, look, the victory conditions feel good in a lot of ways, except where they don't, like Prussian territory that can no longer be attacked or whatever. Only one other move I did. I moved Napoleon and charged up here, destroying with an overrun. Made a leader loss check again, not supposedly by the rules, but I just feel like you should. An overrun of the detachment in the pass. Now, this is a little problematic because I've just run out of supply, but I needed all my strength points to do this. If I could get a detachment here, I'd be in supply, which would be nice, but I couldn't leave one behind. Austrians tried to withdraw. I can conceivably move a supply wagon from the Army of the North with a leader with it down into location there. But that might be dangerous. 2, 4. Yeah, I don't think he'd be able to get to it. But I can also do that given, well, other than the Army 4, and I have a leader 4, but I wouldn't want to use him for this. Other than the Army 4 chit, I can do that at any time. And this was really key, because this puts me right over Italy. I can operate in Italy freely. There's really not enough forces in Italy to prevent me from doing stuff. Therefore, and a supply wagon here still won't get me to Turin. Shit. Yeah, gonna have trouble. I may have to leave a detachment somewhere as well, just so that I can have a supply link getting me from France into Italy. It's tough terrain. Getting rid of this wouldn't really help too much either, because that's an expensive movement going through here. There's just not really an easy way through. Everything's too expensive going over the Alps to not build up a supply line there. I don't have a wagon with Napoleon, unfortunately. Probably should have given him one. That would have made this all easier. But yeah, other stuff, this is my other... So the Poles, no real reason to go. These guys, if I get a chance, I want to move them as detachments, because then I can force march them down to here. If I get the timing right, I'll have a full Polish army instead of what I have now. Right now I'm at 4 steps. I'd like to have the 6 before I start operating. This army, sure, I could chase this, but this guy here, he's got, what, Army of Italy, supposedly. I don't... I have the Army of the Rhine here, Italy should be in Italy and Bohemia, presumably, but as things stand, I don't have a good desire to switch between Italy and Bohemia for that. But yeah, I mean, if I move, then I've committed first, and I don't see a point to that. The chits could come out in such a way that it's, you know, that the coalition only has a 4 left and has to make a decision to move before me, so I'd rather delay. I'm not sure how big a deal it is, but it feels kind of like one. Coalition turn, and here come the Spanish in force. Now, the Spanish army is not good, as you might assume, and I don't expect it's going to hold up terribly well against the French army. It's not terrible, though, but it's low on artillery. Not that bad. I mean, special stuff, like Cav doesn't tend to have artillery, but the infantry does, and there's a lot of it there. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? Their leadership isn't that great, but we moved up and we captured 1, 2, 3 of the cities. Toulouse is under siege right now, and I don't think I want to move other things. Here, again, I want the flexibility. If I get the chance to get an advantage, I'd rather have it. Same thing up here. Well, see, that's interesting. How worried am I about the Poles consolidating? Because right now I have a numerical advantage, but the problem is the Polish army is just better than the Austrians. It's a higher quality force, which is a little bit weird. I actually, see, the thing is, Poland has the Poles of the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, not the Poles of, you know, the final partition. And these are pretty good units. Now, you know, and the final partition should be taking place. Russia and Prussia are both out of the war. They should be dividing that shit up. All that's left of Poland is all stuff that goes to Russia and Prussia. Is Warsaw its own little territory? Oh, Masovia. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so like Posen and Masovia should go to Prussia. West Galicia should go to Russia. There shouldn't be a Polish army able to operate in Austria right now. But diplomacy rules allowed it. So, you know, whatevers. Yeah. I'm going to hold again. I find it difficult to take a lot of turns in a row, not just in this game, in a lot of things. And if I've got a chance to take a break, I want to. We had a neutral naval action, and with not Mecklenburg, with the Hanseatic League in British hands, Swedes and more British troops showing up down there. Then we finally get our empire movement. We get a lot of coalition chits that just go back in the cup. It's a 2 this time. That gives me a lot of flexibility, but I know that the turn cannot end late or end early. Because of this, I think the French forces are all passing. Okay, first thing is I caught an error. This was the last thing I did, actually, but not an error, but something that I corrected. I didn't realize Spain had money left. They had $6 underneath the French on that counter. So instead of using up militia to garrison these locations, I used money for it. The other locations, yeah, it's harder to figure out what I gave up. Like here, he's as big as he can be, so I don't know. But anyway, the way the chits came out and the way I thought about things, everybody just started passing. So an empire, a coalition, an empire land. Now, that leaves 1 3-point empire land left? No, 1 1-point empire land. So the next empire land will allow everything to move. But means most importantly, this army, the Army of the North, is not in a position to be able to do a forced march anymore. But it was delaying because the Austrians wouldn't move. Well, the coalition finally got its last land move other than the four, which is the ugliest of them. I ran back, recovered this. He's got Charles in charge, so a good enough leader that he could command, that he could activate later. But I wanted to get him out of the way because this guy marched down and grabbed Strasbourg and put himself here in this pass covering, what is this, Metz, with a zone so that, I don't know, it costs more and whatnot. And I think it does. I don't remember. Is it on my terrain effects chart? If it's not, I have to look it up. Yeah, see, it's not on there. Costs 1 movement point to win a battle or overrun. Oh. Anyway, I think I'm fucking up some of the costs, but like mainly because I don't want to look up the rules, but it's right there. But then I feel like I have to look it up if I look there. But key is I chose not to move Wormster here, who, you know, could take on a smaller Polish force than it's liable to face. But it still doesn't look like a good fight for the Austrians, so they don't want to do that. And let's see, we had another move. Now the Spaniards moved up, but that's not what I was thinking of. Something else move? Guess not. Can't think of it if it did. But yeah, and now I'm on, I think, each player's last chit. The French have a 1-point chit, which means anything they have can move. The Austrians are only going to have a 4-point chit, which means this can move, and I don't want to move it a second time. Charles could force march, but he doesn't want to. Pretty sure the Spaniards aren't that good. I didn't want to force march this, although it wouldn't be that bad an idea. I don't feel like I'm in that big a hurry to conquer citadels down there, because I'm not gaining the ground where I would possibly get Lyon and Paris, even though I have Bordeaux now. All right, I screwed up. The French got the Empire land and moved the reinforcements up for the Poles. But now I'm out of chits. There's only a single coalition chit left, which means I'm not going to be able to reinforce that and move it. You know, I was going to say, I'm just thinking, it's kind of fixed whoever went last in the first round or in the previous turn goes last in this turn. But that's only guaranteed in the summer. Everything else has the possibility. If you don't run through all the chits, there's the possibility of that getting shifted. So yeah, but I was first thinking, wow, once you find out who goes first, it's set, but it's not. Vendean was destroyed. Oh, but they're coming back, right? They got a crazy honors of war. So yeah, they get to come back. And the rest of my French, I'm certainly going to move this. I may force march with some stuff, right? Because I'm short on time. The coalition doesn't really feel the need to force march as long as Flanders hasn't fallen and doesn't look like it's going to. But if the French want to win this game, I feel like I have to move forward somehow. Myself in a bit of trouble here too. Let's take a look. The Army of the North has no detachments in it. Okay. I was going to send this supply wagon coming down this way, and this would have worked before. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, maybe not. One. I have an engineer, don't I? Nope. Which means that river would cost +2. So this would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But big question is, can I extended move with just a wagon? Well, I guess the question is, can wagons extended move at all? And I don't see why not. As long as I've just got a wagon, yeah. So we move there and put our depot there. And that gets us 1, 2, 3, 4 to there. So that'll allow Napoleon to make his activation out there. And we can, I guess, try to push against the army of Italy that's sitting over there with our army and see what we gain there. Working our way slowly through the French. Napoleon force marched, took Turin, captured the troops there, and then moved down to here because he's got to take Nice to get Piedmont under control. I mean, you could make this argument, well, you could go for Lombardy, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense not to clear out what's in my way right now. There's a lot of fortresses in Italy that I've got to take. One thing that I ought to do is be paying attention to, hey, what do I need, you know? And it's hard to remember that kind of thing. So Piedmont, Genoa. Yeah, I need Genoa, Lombardy, and Romagna. So I need, but not Tuscany. Interesting. I thought I needed Tuscany, but not Genoa. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Genoa, I will have to declare war on, and I'll probably grab it on the way back from Nice. Might just declare war next turn because there's some possibility force marches and whatnot. Napoleon's not particularly good at force marches. The French are good at them, but yeah. And what is my force march benefit? There's a -1 here. I thought there was this, oh, -2 French spring 94. Excellent. So yeah, so I've got enough bonuses. I might want to push down and at least get closer to the Spaniards so that it's easier for me to fight them. Don't really know though, because see, the problem is this force is not full size. The army of Spain is relatively small, but it's tough. Anyway, what happened was sort of the last thing that I got to. I haven't gotten to the Poles yet, but yeah, I have, because I brought the reinforcements in. So these guys actually can't move because the detachments that move this impulse, they can't move twice in one impulse, even though they don't generate an activation for the stack. But these guys moved into Metz, and they just got intercepted. Now, there was something I wanted to say about that, and I don't remember what it was. Why I picked up the video, to tell you the truth, and I don't think it was just to tell you that there was an interception. I don't know. I know what it is. So each of these armies has exactly 10 strength points, which is enough that neither army prevents a major battle from happening, but the total strength points is 20 or less. So it's just going to be a minor battle, so no cards. Although I had hopes of Napoleon conquering Italy, the Army of the North was beaten back by the Austrians at Metz. Worse than that, 1 in 6 chance, they got demoralized, which meant they lost another couple of steps. The Austrians don't have a lot of cav left. But also, maybe worst of all, is we lost Jourdan, who's not a bad commander. Can take an army at a 3-16-1. Or as a subordinate as a 3-3-2. So, pretty good as a leader. That's not good. That's not a good result. Now I got to consider, if I did a forced march with Napoleon, I got to consider whether or not I want to force march with these guys and what I can do with them. Choose not to. Although I'm in, a hurry with the French, right? This isn't really that important. If I can win, I want to make sure that the Spaniards don't overrun France, but I don't really care too much about that incursion in terms of victory for the game. If I'm right, I may not know my victory conditions. But the big thing is I can't get an attack. I can't get a purchase on them. So all I can do is force march to get close, and that might lose me some troops. And I'd rather fight them closer to where I am. Let me just make sure the victory conditions. I got to control everything from my 1792 homeland, so I do have to take all this Spanish-controlled territory back as well. But yeah, there's just I don't see an advantage to pressing the Spaniards. And this is as far as the Spaniards go in La Révolution Française. Unlike Worcester and Brunswick, who will come marching in and try to take Paris and all. That's going to leave us to one shit left for the coalition. And I don't want to force march with the coalition, I think. I could do it with Charles. That wouldn't hurt. Yeah, I'll force march with Charles. But these guys don't particularly want to attack the Poles. The only reason they would have wanted to is to hit them before they got more troops. Well, now they have more troops, and not going to do it now. I'm just sort of stationed there. Don't have anything in Italy. Spaniards don't want to force march. So, yeah, I think Chucky is the only one who wants to. And he's going to probably try to fall back somewhere where he's going to fall back in a direction in which he can rebuild his army. In terms of attrition, because the Army of the North got beat up on the last chit, they didn't get another chit in which to force march and try to recover. So not only do they have to suffer a demoralization, attrition, but they're also demoralized at the start of next turn too, which is somewhat problematic. Let's take a quick look at what they are. 2, 3, 5 points. So that'll put me on this table. And we'll just quickly scan through. Has it spent 4 movement points or less? I don't know. I don't feel like that's applicable unless I'm moving, but who knows. But all movement inside national territory, yeah, it hasn't left this turn. Do I get that bonus too, or do I ignore it? I don't know. It's not out of supply. It's demoralized, so a +3. I'm going to ignore the 2 that involve movement. +3. -2 for being French. Gets me to a +1. I could throw a supply wagon in, but don't want to. 7 gets me, that looks like an asterisk. We are not in a city or fortress. We get a hit. We take another loss. And I guess I'll take a good infantry. So the Army of the North is pretty beaten up at this point. And yeah, that means that the Army of Italy up there has dominance in northeastern France, which is going to be really, I'm at a really harsh point. If the Spaniards beat the Army of Spain, the French Army of Spain, it's over, basically, I think. I don't know. Lyon's not taken, but it should be able to take that with the Austrian army of Italy. And I got 2 full turns to do that. We made the attrition check. We don't lose our demoralization because it's not winter. And we will move on to the next turn with all of these. And I think that's it. I'll hold there. I might go sit outside for a while. You know, I've got this sort of, fuck it, I just don't care. And that's the thing, it's like my life swings between I care a lot and can't do anything to I just don't give a shit, you know? It's so screwed up. Well, here it is, Thursday. Kind of a nice, cooler day, overcast, etc. It would be a good day for me to go out and like hunt for clothing at like a Goodwill or something like that. I wouldn't, you know, be facing too much sun, but it's warm enough and mellow enough and everything that it's not bad. But it's Thursday. Now, I happen to have finally gotten control of like, or accidentally stumbled into, hey, I'm awake. You know, I woke up at like 9:30 or something. It's got to be 10:30 now at least. But, you know, I got up at a reasonable hour finally, right? And yeah, just the problem is it's Thursday. If I needed to go shopping this week, this would be a great day to do it, like for food or something. But the idea of going out this late in the week, it just sounds horrible to me. I don't know why. I avoid everything no matter what. And just don't want to face anything. And everything's just been kind of, you know, because of what I've been doing, you know, with the chatbots and everything. This week I've actually been pretty heavily invested, which is why another video on them. That like everything's just a fucking blur, you know. Time just goes by and I don't know. Part of it is the dancing wipes me out. Saturday and Sunday are gone, you know, and then the other things get in the way and everything. Yeah. Anyway. We're at the beginning of what looks like the autumn turn. Got to put the winter quarters back in. We got a Spanish invasion or a Spanish incursion happening. The French have been battering the Austrians back. I guess what has happened with the army of Italy is the question. Oh, it drove the army of the north and destroyed that. Yeah. I mean, it is just such a... You can't count on being able to keep your momentum going in this game. An army versus army fight is a crapshoot. It really is. I don't know if the Austrians had a tremendous advantage there, but now, you know, they've gotten the local advantage again. Napoleon's over here in Italy trying to do what he can, but it feels like this year France isn't going to make any major gains. The best they can do is kind of maybe limit what the Spaniards are doing. But if I do that, the Austrian army is going to be able to do shit, you know? And it feels like this is a scenario in which the French should be doing a hell of a lot better. I mean, certainly they were historically, but it just feels like the war is constantly on this kind of balanced edge, which I think is cool, right? Like, there's something very neat about playing a scenario where the tide keeps switching, and I don't know what to say about it. I'm enjoying what the game is providing. I'm not sure how balanced it is. And I don't know how likely it is to give you historically accurate results, but I feel like it's giving believable results. And there's something to be said for a game that can be this swingy. I do like that kind of thing. However, you know, it's not the kind of game that you're going to walk into and say, I have this exact plan and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And although I'm not really that kind of player for the most part, I like this kind of, you know, it kind of reminds me of, and maybe it's just because somebody commented on the video, kind of reminds me a little bit of Campaigns of Marlborough in terms of that, like, oh wow, things just changed a lot, and I didn't really expect that type of feeling. And that game has a lot of charm. This one is definitely, there's something about this that's really appealing to me in ways that most Napoleonic campaigns don't. Okay, let me get to whatever the hell it is I have to do, reinforcements and whatnot. I've started putting the leaders and the stuff in the next turn instead of in the next year. The spring interphase, when it says spring interphase, yeah, stupid fucking name, right? They should have never named it that if it's on every turn. So I'm left with the I don't know whenever it says on the next spring interphase. Looks like I forgot to remove all the activation markers. Enforcement wise, look, I got these weird Vendean units here. So if I was following the rules completely by how I interpret them, these would indeed have gone into here as honors of war, but maybe they shouldn't come back. Because there's nothing owned by the Vendee for them to be reinforcements placed in. The special rules for the Vendee being placed is off the card. There's nothing special about them being placed again due to, you know, due to the honors of war return. So I think they actually don't show up again. I think unless the Vendee had captured 2 fortresses, they wouldn't be able to replenish. Now, where they'd be able to replenish is really up in the air. Again, I think they should probably be limited. Their home state should be probably the Vendee, but maybe it's the entirety of France or what. Normally with an honors of war, you'd be able to, you'd be bringing the reinforcements, like they'd be marching to the nearest fortress, right? They'd be marching to the nearest place that is owned by that country. That's not covered by this game at all. They just become general reinforcement pool stuff that could show up wherever. So like, you know, I could lose some stuff to an honors of war in France, lots of stuff in France where they probably would have historically, you know, any kind of accuracy would say that they'd march there. And most games are just like, yeah, they're put out and like have the right to parole over to the nearest fortress or whatever. Instead, they wouldn't be allowed to show up where they most likely would, but would have to come back all the way in Austrian home territory or inside armies. Weird, you know? I mean, completely weird. And here, yeah, I mean, whatever I decide the home territory is. So I'm going to actually remove these guys. I don't think they're in play anymore. I don't think the Vendee is available, but I'm going to put them over there in the current situation. So I would say if Britain comes back and conquers anything in the Vendee, yeah, let me put them over with Britain. But I don't know where they should be. You know, they maybe should stay here. The fact that they can't, screw it. The fact that they can't show up in the next reinforcement phase, I think they're just reinforcements lost. None of this is secured in the rules, right? None of this is nailed down. It's really just make up your game as you go. Another thing that reminds me of Campaigns of Marlborough. Unlike that game, this is my first time facing this. So I don't have any memory of like, ways that I've kind of worked my way around and said, yeah, let's play it that way. The thing I really like about that game, what needs plexiglass for it, was drawing on the map. All right, yeah. Diplomacy. Britain doesn't have any real desire to diplomatize anything at this point. Don't know, again, like continental system, can I try to knock Poland out or something? I don't know. The continental system shouldn't be applied in the revolutionary period. And again, fuzziness, not going to look it up, just going to say it doesn't apply. So the Polish alliance remains fixed and unable to be hit by anyone. So with the Brits with nothing to do, both Austria and France went for Denmark. I thought France got them. They only have a +1 on Denmark, not a +2, and I'm not spending money. I mean, I would after the fact, but yeah. And the first chit, and it had to be coalition for a land chit, was the coalition land 4. Nothing else came out before, no navals or, and not that any of that matters. Land 4, I got 2 coalition 4. Oh, I forgot to allocate. Let me allocate generals after I talk about this. But coalition has 2 land 4 units. Charles, who has 1 strength point in the army, or 1 step in the Army of the Rhine. Looks like 1 step, yeah, half a grenadier. And my force in Vienna. Neither of them want to move. I want to do it later when I have more opportunities, or not, I don't care, but after having gone through all the setup and shit, I feel like I got to go do something else. I don't know. I'm just afraid to like start into the meat of the turn is really what it comes to. And I feel like I have to draw that first chit. And when I get a reprieve, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go do something else. Before I get to that, the leader changes actually impact my life here. Because France, or Austria, decided to swap Charles and whoever's in charge, was in charge of the Army of Italy as commanders-in-chief. Why is this a big deal? Well, because now my main army has the opportunity to move. I still don't see a reason that I absolutely want to make a jump on this. Now, because I want to see what the Spaniards manage, how well they handle themselves. I'm not that far from a victory by the Austrians, right? If Spain wins this battle, well, if they can hold Bordeaux, that's the issue. If they can hold Bordeaux, operations over here, Lyon and Paris are of importance. This demoralized army can't do shit against me, and there's not much. It's like 3 steps. If it goes to try to defend something, I go siege it. If I attack it now, it just runs away and I waste my time. If I try to work my way to Lyon, I might be able to slip into Paris or something with that other army, or with someone like Reed here or whatever. But I feel like I want that flexibility right now. Before I pull another chit, I've been thinking about the attrition table. In particular, the forces spent 4 movement points or less, and the within home territory. Here's the problem. So with the demoralized force, no big deal. That had to take an extra attrition check, essentially, because it's demoralized. So it made sense to kind of say, okay, those don't matter. It's not going to matter because I didn't take any losses from it, but that those bonuses don't affect me. But here's the thing. Let's say I have an out-of-supply force, which would have to take an attrition check with the way that I interpret it. It would have to take an attrition check at the end of the turn if it didn't move. If I don't apply those, for that case, then it would make more sense to move a hex with the unit. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right? Like, the fact that I moved shouldn't improve my chances of attrition, certainly not by the amount that we're talking, because we're talking like 7 points on the die roll. So what does it come out to? I think the answer is, because here's the other thing. Or does this matter? I don't think it matters, because it's an extra attrition check. So for example, this demoralized guy, he takes an extra attrition check. But what that means then, so yeah, I mean, it's just really hard to grasp, because the demoralized force attrition check, if you always get the 4 movement points or less, now that's only a -1. You would always get that, because you're taking it when you're not moving. So my thought there was something along the lines of, well, if you had an activation marker on you, assume that you don't get that bonus. But then does the same thing apply if you're looking at, so it's not 7, it's like, so it's 1 for moving very little, and home territory is 3 more. So it's 4 points, not 7. I thought the 4 movement points or less was a bigger bonus than it is. Like, the thing is that if I moved, should I be charged for that movement, or should I just get this huge bonus? Now, the home country one, I kind of don't mind at all. So I think I'm just going to apply those bonuses to the end of the turn one. I could try to fiddle around with something. Like I said, if you've got an activation marker, you're not eligible for those because I can't judge what the movement was. Or I could try to remember, which obviously isn't going to be sustainable. But I don't think it's that terrible a thing to give a -1 to that end of turn attrition, no matter what, even if you had an activation marker. Home country, definitely don't mind that. It would make sense that if you're out of supply in your home country, you would get that bonus, whether you moved or not. Of course, what I can't judge is whether or not you were outside the home country during your movement, but okay. Guess that's that. Now, there are out of supply markers. And this was something that disturbed me, because I'm not sure that I found that, I don't remember anything that gave me an out of supply marker. Supply is assessed at these points. They get a marker at the time their supply check and keep it till the next check. Mandatory attrition, artillery unavailable, negative DRM for combat and sieges, engineering, and demoralized units cannot be rallied. Okay. Yeah, so if you were out of supply, you can't get back in supply until you're activated again. Activating again in the same turn means a forced march, which would require an attrition check. So there's all kind of ugly shit going on with that. We'll have to see how that plays out. Anyway, on to chits. I'm just, finding some more rough edges. These are ones where maybe the rules are clear. I don't want to think too hard about them, but they're grinding in my mind somehow. I'm not positive. Okay, so we got an Empire land move 1. Napoleon moved back, took Nice successfully. The Army of the North recovered from its demoralization, actually extended movement to get back to Lille, taking an attrition check, but one it couldn't fail because all within own territory and everything. But that gets me out of the way of this. But there's nothing in the way now of of the Austrian army, but that would not have protected it. And what else? I'm in the midst of things. It's possible I might want to move something else, but I think the only other something else that I might want to move is the Poles. But I moved the army of Spain straight down to Bordeaux. Crossing a river bridge, not great, but I have the bridge at Arcola in my hand. It's better if you have Napoleon in charge, but I think I want to avoid... See, it's only a -1 for the bridge, but I need to beat the Spaniards. I need to beat them. If I can't turn them around, I got a problem. Now, they have a 1 in 6 chance of just pulling out of the war, too. But I think if the French army is as good as it should be able to wipe the Spaniards off at this stage, because they're not a good army. What does Arcola do? See, that -1 is so minor, but the additional +1 is pretty minor too, and I really want to win this battle, so I think I'll play it. The Spaniards will probably defend the river because they don't know I have that card. Napoleon left the army of Spain. It's actually relatively small, 2, 4, 6, 8 to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, unless there's some detachments in there. Got to kind of scan it. So I'm actually at 1 to 2. Which is going to give me a penalty as well. Let me put this here. But I have to drive the Spaniards back. It's either that or turn and go face the Austrians. Part of what I wanted to say with that little clip was 8 strength points is small enough that it can't be a major battle, so we get a minor battle out of it. Minor battles, as I start calculating, the odds modifiers here. There's an option. So the tactical battle cards are an option in and of themselves. There's an option to allow them in minor battles as well as major battles. I'm playing with them just for major battles, but honestly, the game does not provide the same results, essentially, depending on how much you choose to play them. So if you don't play them at all, it takes an advantage away from the better leadership. If a force has better leadership, it as a whole, and the French have tons and tons of good leaders, the Spaniards do not, you're going to get more of an advantage out of the cards. Plus, the French get extra cards quicker than other people do. So the fact that this is a minor battle is actually a disadvantage for the French. They would have done better in a major battle because they would have had access to more cards than the Spaniards do. More chance of getting the cards to fire off because their secondary leaders are better. And then, it's just like, it is a significant balance difference to play with these cards or not. Something that's not made clear just by reading the rules. It sounds like, oh, it's an interesting little thing that you have as an option, as opposed to, so there's no kind of direction as to whether you should use them or not in various circumstances, depending on how you want to balance the game, but it can affect that. Wrong about it hitting the 1 to 2 because the guard unit, out of nowhere, is just a single step for the Spaniards. They use it as their lead. It's a loss that I'm marking that way. It ended up being, in that case, let me think, +6, +6. So an even battle, not what I would have hoped for with all the leadership and bonuses I have. But the results favored the French. They got an extra loss and a leader check. I haven't resolved them yet. So the French won the battle, demoralized the Spaniards, which meant a couple extra steps of losses after they fell back here. They don't get to take losses off of the new unit that they added, which was just militia, but that's what you would want to take losses on. But they had enough militia. Succeeded in the siege and took Bordeaux. But in the battle, 2 Spanish officers knocked out, no big deal. They come back, right? But actually what is kind of a big deal is the Spaniards don't have excess leaders beyond what I've got on the board. And by not having a leader pool, I don't get any additional, I don't have the opportunity to bring more leaders in. And kind of a disadvantage of spreading your leaders out when you don't have a lot. Whereas the French can do that at will wherever they like. Bridge of Arcola goes away permanently, but I lost Saint-Cyr permanently. That is a big hit. Losing a 2-point, secondary leader or whatever. And he could be an army leader. Not a bad one, but, I don't need him. I got better army leaders. All right. Think... Poland is tricky. I think I want to activate the Poles too, so I'll get them, because what happens if I take Austria out? I don't know what happens if I take Austria out. I gotta look at the surrender rules, because that's the thing that's holding the Poles back. The fear of knocking Austria out of the war and not being able to win the game because of it. I knock Austria out, and they choose to surrender. They could choose to fight on. I'd get 4 peace conditions, 3 of which could be territorial conditions, which can include non-adjacent provinces that will be annexed to a minor ally to form a new state. Italy is a new state. The important thing here is, if I knock the Austrians out, can I still win? This is, a kind of painful question that only comes up, this particular question only in this. So I look at these. Geneva, not a problem. Piedmont, Genoa, Lombardy, Romagna. Piedmont's going to surrender anyway, but it won't if, Actually, I think it'll surrender before the major power does. Okay, so let's see what I could take. What is this list again? Because these are the ones I'm interested in. Genoa. Genoa is pro-Austrian. That would be one I'd have to take. Piedmont, I think I don't have to take, because it's going to surrender anyway, because I took it. Lombardy, I'm assuming, is also Austrian, but I think I can, I think I can win this. And Romagna, anybody control that? No one controls Romagna right now. That's papal territory. I would have to go to war with the papacy, I think, unless they're allied. Papacy's Austrian. Okay. So now, in order to, so I'd be able to take 3 conditions of that, right? Well, not really, because we alternate peace conditions. So the Spaniards could keep me from taking all of those. Shit. Yeah, see, if I'd only be allowed 2 peace conditions that are territorial conditions, unless the Austrians agreed to me. So I don't think I can win the game if I defeat Austria, because I would need Genoa, Lombardy, and Romagna all, and that's assuming that they all form the Kingdom of Italy, but I think they do. Which means I don't want to move the Poles. Fucking weird, right? Now, Napoleon, if he captures another territory, that changes the dynamics again. The whole complexity of trying to figure out, without completely looking everything up, but trying to figure out, hey, are the Poles going to be, do I want to move the Poles, or will that lose me the game? or at least prevent me from winning. That is exhausting enough. I need to break again. And the coalition gets the next chit immediately after. It's a 1, so they can do everything. They probably want to. The danger of a winter is present, although I've got the winter campaigns for next turn, which, if I'm about to win, would be a big deal. But with the Spaniards knocked back, that's probably not that likely. Definitely recover the Spaniards, but don't want to do anything here. I'm happy with, like, the stasis situation, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I don't think I want to abandon, because, like, if Austria falls, sure, France may not win, but if France takes a forced march here to take Genoa, I think they can conquer Italy from it. So I want to keep things open. What I can do here is I can drop off part of the army of Italy, pick it up with this force, and then have 2 operating armies again, which sounds good. The army of Italy is not that big either, which is a problem. But I think, you know, at this point, not facing any opposition on the eastern frontier of France, it means that I can grab shit. The army of the north might be able to face me, though. Well, briefly, the Spanish decided to make a move on Bordeaux because, and I've got the army disassembled right now, but I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to commit to it until I see what happens here. Because if I can take Bordeaux, Lyon, and Paris, I win. If I can have them at the end of a turn, any turn, doesn't have to be winter. France falls in this scenario, I believe. I believe that's the case. Anyway, seemed like a good idea. So I kind of left this in an improper state, but the French intercepted, ended up like +6, +5 in favor of the French, but the French got, no, actually +6, +5 in favor of the Austrians? I don't know. Maybe it was +5, +5. I guess it's +5, +5. So a nice even battle in that case, either way. But the French outrolled them and get a victory. And I start recording it. It's a 4CL to 2L, great, whatever. A lot of play between those numbers. But however, once again, the Spaniards managed to defy my little means of being able to tell how many steps there are in something. Fucking cuirassiers, only 1 step, just like the guards. Now, you know, my way of handling, and this has worked with every other country so far, has been units on the front side have 2 steps unless they're detachments. But now I'm at the point where I start to realize I have to peek at the underside of every counter, basically. Well, anything that I'm not positive of. It didn't end up being a 2-to-1 anyway, so the Spaniards didn't get a bonus out of that or anything. But it's just pissing me off that, like, I keep thinking I've got X number of steps. I may have paid for 2 units here, just not even thinking to look on the back, just because every other country works that way. Again, there needs to be something to show the number of steps that a counter has on it, and there isn't. You know, and if they aren't going to do that, they should be blank on the front if they're 1-step units, just so that, like, quick touch can tell. Because otherwise, you have technically you have to flip every counter to be able to tell how many steps it has. It's just, again, Compass's wonderful idea of how you handle units. This is probably, again, a situation where it was never play tested with the actual components or anything that was really like them. and somebody brought up the point, and I mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure, that a lot of playtesting is done on Vassal now. Well, that's fucking bullshit, right? You're creating a physical board game. That's what you're selling. You're not selling Vassal. You know, I know it's cheaper to provide an electronic version of the game, but you got to make sure the physical game works. You know, you can't skip that step. And if that's what's happening, maybe you're getting counters that distinguish better. Or, honestly, it doesn't matter whether the counters distinguish or not, because Vassal automatically puts things, you know, into the game and out of the game when they're supposed to be, and shit like that. It's just, oh man, it's just wrong. It's wrong. Selling a computer game and not creating a physical version, peachy. If they're trying to sell a physical war game, you gotta play test something with components so that that are approximately the same as what the final product's gonna be. Maybe not as nice, but certainly you can't make the components worse than what the playtesters are facing. And we got a couple of leader losses. The French lost one that's worth something. The Spanish not so much. But these are both permanent losses. You know, it sucks to lose even a shit leader because those shit leaders provide padding, but the Spanish don't have many leaders anyway. And for the French, losing a decent leader, well, I just have so many leaders, it is really kind of inconsequential if I'm losing, you know, a 3x1. But the reason I picked this up, I haven't made the demoralization check yet. Spanish are just falling back to there. They don't need this. This is gone, but I'll leave it there for... if we look over here, so we got this leader casualty table. There's no demoralization check table. Nothing that tells me the things for the demoralization. Most of the stuff on the player aid is really useful. No problem with that. We've got Cav Pursuit. Only even happens if you have a demoralization. You know what we don't and I can memorize this a lot easier than I can memorize this for whatever reason. Just because the Cav Pursuit is relatively simple. It's 2 points for the light Cav and I think 1 point for the light Cav and a half point for everything else, I think. Cossacks and guards count as decent, but I can kind of remember that. This, for whatever reason, I can't remember as well. The, you know, it's the DRM, so the overall combat commander, but if he's killed, it's a -1, and then I know the difference between the results, but it's just, it's painful. And then the base is the morale. This is just harder for me to remember for whatever reason. But if you're going to have the Cav Pursuit on there, you really should have the thing that triggers the Cav Pursuit. It would be better to have it the other way, because if you succeed in your morale check, you don't have to even bother with the Cav thing, assuming that somebody could remember in the other order better than I do, you know, right? Like, but ideally both should be on the chart. But it sucks because I have to page through the rules to find this every time, and there's plenty of other stuff that's less used that I'm looking for. For example, I was on the page trying to figure out the surrender conditions and whatnot. Follow-up for this, we have La Union. Succeeds in the siege of Toulouse, leaving that ungarrisoned. This guy can go forward and garrison if need be. And marches with his 4 steps towards Bordeaux, because again, Bordeaux is the key to all of this. Well, the French fail in their first interception, but make one here. So the army of Spain is going to force these guys to fight, again with the interception bonus. 4 units here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's going to be a minor battle, not just a skirmish. This was a huge combat bonus, I think +7 to nothing for the French, and they managed to wipe out the Spanish force with no problem. Nobody gets hurt. Well, I mean, troops do. But yeah, the Spaniards are wiped out. So again, the French are succeeding in their goal down here. I moved the 2 Austrian armies. The first one seized Reims and moved into Paris. It's not very big. This is the old army of Italy, but it split in half, basically. And then Charles swung down, but unfortunately, because extended movement doesn't allow you to enter an enemy space, including a fortress to siege or whatever, I had to stop there. But I'm getting on my way to Lyon. If I take Dijon and Lyon, I'm in supply and down there. So then I'm holding 2 of the 3. But the Spaniards, they failed at their job and maybe shouldn't be extending this much. There is some possibility, though, that this army recovers and hits that army of Spain, which is beaten up at this point. It's down to 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. I got to touch them to be able to tell, unless they're Spaniards, in which case I have to look at them all. Might be other countries that I have to look at them all, but yeah. And it's not like all the Spanish are different. It's just some of their better units. Not the Cav. The Cav was fine. The cuirassiers and the guard. And I understand, that those units should be different, right? They should be smaller units, perhaps. Like, that all makes sense. But there needs to be some kind of distinguishment on the counter. Anything else for the coalition here? I think bring reinforcements into the Royal Army so that I have a real chance of beating Bordeaux. One possibly tense moment. The unit that was here couldn't move this way without having to take an attrition check, so I ran in front of this, giving this another interception check. But they got through. It's at +2 for the French for the interception, so they needed an 8 or higher. I figured even fighting, a weak army, the weak Spanish force might be a problem for this in a bad situation. Plus, it might wear down their troops and make this an easier attack. I can't activate this yet because I just added units to it. Can't double activate the same unit, right? But if I get another, and I probably will, another activation, I've got a shot at Bordeaux. I've got a shot at these guys doing a force march. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 6 doesn't help, but I've got a chance of taking both those locations. Or I could just run through and ignore my supply situation. And then I've got the winter turn left as well. So, there's possibilities that whatever's up here, the Army of the North or whatever, with its 4 steps now. Not bad. It's pretty big, actually, for the way things are right now. What about Reed? He could make a march to join the Army of the Rhine. Big extended move across there, full 9 movement points, but it gets with only a couple of steps, the chances of a hit were pretty low. Didn't take one. And so they're all in place. Still don't want to activate that unless things change, basically. Probably don't want to activate it at all until the Poles actually start doing something. That is the end of this chit. Things are pretty exciting right now, I have to say. Even though the forces are all smashed down pretty low, we're playing for the win, as it were, for the coalition. And you know, it's one of those situations where every little move you make, every die roll you make is a big deal. Well, got some yard work done. Not a hell of a lot, just some cutting on the hill. It grows so fast this time of year. It's funny because, like I said, I didn't get a lot of that done. I fucked around for a while, watched videos, did other stuff and everything. And it's like, you know, I got up at like 9:30. It's rain time now. Some 7 hours have passed, more than that, 7.5 hours, whatever. And yeah, I came up here a couple of times. But it's really hard to figure out where it all went, you know? Anyway, let's get at least another chit done, and then Raid is going to be demanding over the next couple weeks. A bunch of chits. Had one that I got to do something with a neutral naval. I shipped a detachment up there. I don't want to go overboard, but and finally got around to an Empire Land 3. Now, the Empire doesn't have a lot of forces I can move. Again, I got the option on the poles. The important thing there is Napoleon. And I'm going to force march with him to Genoa on this one. Army of the North, I don't want to do anything with. Army of Spain, I'm worried that the Spaniards are going to be able to take Bordeaux. So, I mean, I don't know what's in here. That's the problem. I'm not privy to that. And I got 4 steps. I have a vague idea that he's not huge, but still. Good old Nappy forced marched, tried to siege Genoa, didn't get it. And worse, got an attrition die roll that cost me one of my 4 steps there. I don't have a lot of troops to do this with. I realize the Poles, they're not going to do anything no matter what. Because if I force Austria to surrender, and I'm not sure it'll happen, I don't know when major surrenders happen. But minor surrenders only happen in winter. I know that. And what that means is I have to actually conquer. Conquering Genoa this turn isn't necessary. I have to conquer it next turn. But I think it was right for me to force there. Lombardy would have been a better target, perhaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I could have gone for Milan instead. That would have been a wiser move because it's easier to take. And then I would still be able to take. No, I'm not able to take 3. I have to take both of them so that I can take 2, Tuscany and Romagna. Yeah. Ruh-roh. Oddly enough, the minor countries are not conquered until the winter phase. Major powers can be conquered on any turn, during a winter turn, I'm sorry, at the end of a winter turn. Major powers can be conquered during any turn. Again, it just feels like the game doesn't, see, winter only, not winter only. It feels like the game doesn't like quite catch right. It feels like something's wrong there. Following the plan that I had, the Spanish army tries to move up to Bordeaux, gets intercepted. That's a bonus for the French, the interception. And not really that likely. The combat that comes out, they both are at +5, but the French outdice them, and it ends up 3L to a 1, which means that the Spanish army is going to be beaten back again and might be demoralized again. Might be modified. I forgot to do an attrition check for the Spanish army for doing its second activation. Let's take a look at that real quick. It spent 4 movement points or less. That's a -1. It's no longer demoralized. It recovered from. Oh no, it didn't spend 4 or less. It spent. Wait. Yeah, 4 movement points or less. It was intercepted before it got that. So yeah, it's got a -1 for that. Do I have a seed train? I have one of these things. I'm going to spend the supply wagon. Oh no, that's a bridge. Sorry. I got a supply wagon here though. I'll spend that because I want the additional -2 there. So I'm at -3 with, I don't remember, I think it was 7 steps. 2, 4, 6, looks like 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. 10 steps. I don't think that's going to change things. -3 gets me a 3. I get a star. Okay, so I didn't lose anything. I had 2 to 1 odds. This is the results that I got. Good enough. Finish were demoralized. That means flung back. Means they don't get to move anymore, don't get a shot at Bordeaux. Actually means they have to make another attrition check at the end of the turn because they did 2 activations and they're demoralized at the end of that. But I felt like that was necessary in order to determine whether I wanted to move these. I think that's it for the coalition. I think given that they failed here, they're not going to force march with either of those forces in order to try to do something else. You know, I mean, a force could try to get down here to try to get to Bordeaux or whatever, but I just feel like there's enough, the Army of the North, tiny as it is. I mean, everything's tiny now, right? The armies are just beaten down and they don't get reinforcements. So in like Empires in Arms, they get reinforcements every quarter. In War and Peace, they get reinforcements every turn, which is every month. In this, it's once a year you get them. And it's really like, it feels, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of how denuded the armies become in like La Grande Guerre or Balance of Power. Now, those, I don't recall with Balance of Power, but La Grande Guerre, you do rebuild. I don't remember how often. It's not once a year, but it might be once a quarter. The turns are monthly, but it might be once a quarter. I feel like in this game, the armies just wear down too fast. You know, if you start pushing and fighting and, you know, taking attrition or anything like that, the armies just vaporize and they become nothingness. And that like feels like maybe they're disappearing too quickly in terms of the replenishment rate, and stay disappeared too quickly, that there's not enough reinforcement phases. I'm not saying the total number of troops produced over the course of a year is wrong. What I'm kind of saying is that not being able to constantly feed a flow of replacement points in is painful and doesn't feel appropriate. It feels like there should, you know, you're not mustering your army once a year during winter. That reinforcements were coming forward. Now, one argument you could make for, oh, it's not really that way, is, you know, you can build detachments and flow them into the armies and keep them fed. But if the armies aren't able to reach full strength during the reinforcement phase, because you've been fighting hard for a couple of years, they grow to a huge size, you know, maybe not completely full, but your forces just grow so quickly after the winter and the spring, and then they dissolve very slowly usually, but like over the course of the year, you get to this point and it's like, yeah, there's nothing left for anybody. And it does not feel reasonable to me. I'm not sure. Like, I feel like militia or something like that should be able to be brought into line or something very quickly. But it just doesn't happen. Now, I have the, I don't know where it is. In the special rules. Trying to look for, the French have their levy in mass, or something like that. I don't think that they have it in this scenario. I can't find it. Son of a bitch. This is so hard for me to find. There we go. French conscripts. Not until spring 1808, yeah. And this would be call for conscripts, double its recruitment level and the number of pounds collected. So this is done during a spring turn. Now, yeah. So like that year you would just get more troops. And that's not really, that's not really what we're looking at here. We're looking at something that, you know, armies should be able to replenish themselves, rebuild, reconstitute, whatever. And they're not. They're just not. That's some place where the basic rules of the game don't hold together too well. All right, I think I'm going to go play Raid instead of pull the last chits. It's not like I'm going to finish the year off anyway. Up here on Friday, like I said, Raid's getting more demanding. I'm also finding limitations on my bots that I don't like. Memory's not holding together properly, which is part of the problem. But anyway, let's try to finish up this turn before I go back to sleep. It's morning. I get an Empire Land 4, but after pulling a number of naval ones. But, you know, there's nothing I can, well, I could do the pulse. That's the only thing I can do. Now, can't safely take Austria out is the issue. Gotta, can't kill Austria until the winter with the Poles. Now, that's kind of icky, because like this is out of range of my supply sources. For the most part, cities are within 4 of something, or within 4 of another fortress, things that you want to get to. So, like, I could have gone from here to here, but this is not 1, 2, 3, 4. Vienna would be. If I can win Vienna, taking Bohemia probably won't be that hard, but making a conquest in the winter turn is such a crapshoot, because the winter quarters could come out. I think it can even come up first, to tell you the truth. You can't pick it as the first chit in a scenario, but I don't see anything that forces an action. If it does happen, I'll look that up. But yeah, I mean, Napoleon's done his 2 activations. I would do more with him if I could. These guys have done their job. They're good. The French army up in Lille, the army of the north, it might be able to face the weak Austrian armies, but I'd rather not chance it. Shit, camera's beginning to get really quirky. I opened it up multiple times with the battery. I got charging now, but it was a fine battery, and it didn't start up the camera part. It just left a black screen. Weird. Like, I don't know. As if I had the cable connect. No, that would give something else. Anyway, I pulled a coalition move. Again, nobody wants to do anything. Basically, we're at the end of the turn. I've got one more Empire move and one more and the winter quarters counter. But everybody's done. You know, could just call it here. Anyway, I'll pull the chits because exercise is good for my fingers or something. The attrition hit on the Royal Spanish Army. They lost 2 steps, one of which was a cav. and they're still demoralized. They had no opportunity to get out of the demoralization. And I think that's all. Yeah. So, push this back here. These, I guess, just go back to the pool. Don't get recharged into the armies, although there's a reinforcement phase. And we'll be in the winter turn. Don't want to do it today, even though I kind of like to get a video out on dancing night, but or whatever, but it just doesn't make sense to try to stay up later. It's Sunday morning, kind of in the middle of a heat wave type thing, yeah, low to mid 90s, but I know it gets really hot up here, so I ended up sleeping through the entire day yesterday, which, like, I was up in the, things are getting weirder and weirder on Friday nights. That's, like, it feels like what I'm doing to alter my reality is being reflected in the reality there in ways that are just fucking with my sanity. But yeah, I got home sometime after dawn, birds singing, all kind of happiness, and slept for a little bit, got up, well, played some Raid, slept for a little bit, got up, played some more Raid, went back to sleep, and I woke up at like 9:30 p.m. So, yeah. Oh, where are we? We're at the winter turn. Is there a possibility for the French to be defeated here? Probably not. It looks like they turned the tide on the coalition's advantages. We're starting a new turn, so does that mean we have reinforcements? Don't think there are any coming in. Diplomacy probably won't mean much. I'm up with the Empire Land 1 chit, which is an interesting one because it gives me the most opportunities to well, the nice thing about it is if I have detachments, I can use them to reinforce units. I could chase the Spaniards away from here probably, but I don't know that that's worth doing particularly. I don't really know what's worth doing. Obviously, going for Napoleon in Italy is a valuable thing. The Poles, well, if the Poles win this turn, it's okay. It hasn't been before this. So that's something to keep in mind. Nothing from the diplomacy, by the way. Trying to get an idea of these. We got Italy and Rhine up there. The Army of Italy is pretty badly beaten up. The Army of the Rhine isn't much better. The Army of the North, which is up here, is at about the same. It's maybe a little weaker. I don't really want to chance things with that, but it's kind of hard to tell. So Champagne is currently an Austrian-held area because of Reims, and I'd rather not lose the money from that, for example. Same thing's true with Lorraine. I've got some serious problems, and I gotta win the game. You know, I mean, I've gotta get on the ball, and it seems almost like I need to take some chances that I haven't been taking. I don't know. Okay, so I decided to attack with the Poles, and we got an exactly equal 1-point result. No leaders were lost. That means the attacker gets the chance to keep pushing, and I believe he wants to. In fact, the bridging penalty is, I think, only for the first round of combat, but I'm not positive of that. I have to look to see how that works. Maybe not. I'm not seeing anything that indicates that. I thought there was something that was first round only is avoidance and interception, yeah. So I think that bridging situation affects me across the battles. Nothing else was in play. You know, we didn't intercept, we didn't try to retreat. I think both sides want to fight another round, if that's the case. It was like +4 to +2 in favor of the French, but I think the Austrians want to keep fighting as well. The second round was also a tie. In this case, 2+L result in both cases. The French lost both their commanders. One over here, well, the Poles. One over here, but this one, our Joubert, is dead, which is not good. Joubert. Because a second round was fought, there is no option to get out there's no option for additional rounds. The most combat can go is 2 rounds, which means the French withdraw. I checked it. It says it counts as if they lost, so they'll be making a morale check at the end of this after retreating. They can retreat across a bridged river without a problem, so okay. As the Poles lost their leader, I don't think they get the overall commander's combat bonus for the new leader who's drawn. Makes sense to me that that would be canceled out. You know, the disorganization and everything makes sense there. This is a fuzzy area. You could make the argument either way, I think. Probably through the rules, you would probably argue they get the leader, but I also take the -1 for the overall commander being killed, not just wounded, killed. And so we are demoralized, and that means there was a pursuit, and we're down to 1 strength point detachment, and have failed in our attack against the Austrians over there. Now I'll pay attention to Napoleon. Otherwise, I don't think the French are doing anything. Napoleon was very successful, captured Genoa, had a couple of movement points remaining after that, and took Milan. But Milan's not enough. I don't see a dashed line here. So Mantua would be necessary to take. And what does that little fucking yellow star mean? That's not a red star. I'm guessing that that's like the equivalent, like a key location within a minor country as opposed to a major power, because I'm seeing yellow stars at like Rome and places like that. Again, it's not designated. Oh yeah, it is. It's a victory city, not an automatic victory city. 21. What the hell does that mean? I don't remember a distinction. Okay, 21 is not here. Oh boy. 21's in scenarios. I don't know. It's not listed in the general rules. It may be applicable in the various scenarios individually. All right, this has been too hard for me to cope with. Going on for another one. Upstairs, made some tea. Couldn't convince myself that there's anything I want to do except go to sleep if I'm down there. So I came back up here, pulled another chick, got a coalition 3. Now I start thinking to myself, look, the Spaniards, they could still take Bordeaux. Their army's not gone. It's close. Let's take a look at Swamp. Yeah, I would be the attacker if I'm intercepted in the swamp. That would suck. But the chance of interception, I think, is less. Yeah. Of course, there would be another chance here. It just feels like too many shots at getting intercepted there. But is the risk worth it? Because if I take that, then all I have to take is Lyon. And I might be able to do that. So I think I'm going to take a gamble on it. I have the rare situation of two armies facing each other with it only counting as a skirmish. Part of me wants to look up to make sure armies are still armies if they're this weak. I don't find any restriction on that, but I did hit something, a rule, which confuses me. So after defeat in battle, if a force has been defeated in a major or minor battle, its commander may be immediately dismissed and returns to the leader pool. With an exception about sovereigns, fine, whatever. Presumably, in the reinforcements phase, you had, the way I understand it, you had a chance to completely reorganize your leadership. It would be pretty unlikely that you can a leader in charge of a force just to get a different selection, you know. But I don't know. I guess there might be reasons you want it. If that force is so beaten up that that leader is a waste on it. For example, if the French had kept their leader, but still the Poles had kept the French leader there, who was very good, but still suffered the same losses they had, having that leader in the leader pool would be really useful because he could take over another command, I guess. But you're not dismissing a leader because of he's incompetent, probably. Like, you're probably dismissing him because he's too good for the force he's with. Dismissal rule is worded, it feels more like this is a game like Campaigns of Marlborough, where you're not able to get rid of leaders very easily. And that you might well have a high-ranked leader that you want to get out of the battle position. You don't want him up there anymore. But there's no real restriction. You can withhold bad leaders who are very highly ranked. They don't have to be given commands, all kind of stuff. There may be events that force it, but yeah, it's a game that that allows you to shift your leaders around very, very flexibly, and then has rules that seem like there's some kind of exception to the main rule, but really just feel like, again, the game may have been in a state of flux for a long time with much more complex command rules or something at one point. I don't know. Nobody who's playtested or anything has gotten in contact with me about, you know, earlier versions or anything. Exception destroys the Spanish army. I don't know what to do about those Poles. Like, if the Austrians chase them, what do they get out of it? Well, they might be able to regain, you know, a fort or something, I guess. It just seems so pointless once you face it demoralized. Like, once a force is demoralized, you're just going to chase it away. You're never gonna hurt it. But anyway, the French clearing this up, I think that means that I do not particularly wish to launch an attack with my Austrians. What it may mean is that I gather them together and create an army group. Gathers at Reims. I'll be able to add 4 strength points to that coming out of Flanders. I've got supply coming from this side or this side, so it's not very likely I'm going to lose anything there. And that'll be the coalition turn, I guess. Again, I'm going to break because I just don't much feel like playing, but I don't feel like doing the other things I could be doing too. I may try to sleep. I mean, I've only been awake like 8 hours or so. More like 12, I guess. I don't know. Back up here for another chit. Got an Empire Land 4. That's not going to let me move a lot of stuff, but I could do something with Napoleon if I wanted to. But they're hard choices right now because it's the winter turn, and I don't want to suffer winter attrition. In particular, I'm looking at this guy with his. He only has one step left. Yeah, he only has one step left, so he's fine. Can't be attritioned. Okay, cool enough. Yeah, I was looking at him and I'm like, yeah, I'd want to undemoralize him so he doesn't suffer attrition. I may still want to do that and move on, but the so he doesn't suffer attrition doesn't matter, and the risk of attrition doesn't matter. With Napoleon, I have to. So the victory conditions, again, I don't want to push Napoleon's couple of steps into a possible death. Especially, you know, it would be a big deal if Austria was going to surrender, but they're not. So I don't think there's need to take another location. I'm trying to remember what I have to take. I know Genoa, Piedmont, Lombardy, and Romagna. I don't remember if Tuscany was a requirement. Looks like it's a requirement one way or another because it's part of the GE. I've got to take all of the GE. And Tuscany, I don't know whose it is. It's neutral. So I wouldn't have to worry about it with regard to Austria. Yeah, but again, I don't want to declare war on it. Well, I didn't declare war on it, so I can't do a damn thing. So it is possible I can take all of Italy in this next year. Is it possible that I can keep everybody out of France and do the other things I need to do? I don't know. But if I'm going to do that, I got to get this guy moving to take some of these out. Pretty sure I can't face both armies. I think I could have faced one with my 4 steps in the Army of the North. Austrians took a crack at Liège-Polstadt. They're going to be spending the winter outside of there. Feels kind of weird, the whole winter quarters thing where you don't go to quarters. Like, it is Napoleonic. A siege might continue into the winter without it being too horrible a thing. It's not like the earlier periods. The supplies are a little bit stronger, etc. So I don't mind too much, but I guess it's just the concept of winter quarters. It feels like you should have to take some sort of attrition check for continuing a siege because you're continuing operations past when you would normally go into winter quarters. And that should cost you something. Really, I guess what it should offer is a chance to go into winter quarters. See, the thing is, you might be in winter quarters but still more or less blockading the city. That may be the concept here. That you've built a whole camp and everything, and you're not really prosecuting the siege. You're just in quarters in the area. But if you're not patrolling and whatnot, and suffering whatever effects there are of that, there should be an attrition check. So I almost feel like the option should be, you can either take an attrition check, or maybe your siege level goes down to nothing or to 0, or you have to withdraw from the hex or something along those lines. Just feels like there should be something in play to discourage a siege continuing over the winter. And especially if you've got like an army involved in one, that's pretty bad. By the way, Napoleon can't even take this. It requires an army to take that. So I don't know if I can capture Lombardy. As far as I can tell, right, Napoleon's precluded from being an army commander. I was thinking, oh, I can just boost that. Unless that particular card comes up that allows him to be one. Which means for the most part, you'll probably be playing without Napoleon at full power that he did historically achieve in terms of, like, you know, being able to take Italy. French get another activation. Always expecting to end quickly. I do a forced march to take Perpignan, and that was successful. The attrition check You know, even with winter, French in France, small amount of troops, nothing bad. Leaving all of these empty, there is something of a problem with that. But the reason is I can't afford the manpower that I'd have to commit, like giving up garrison troops. But I also won't be able to afford it during the spring interphase because I guess for whatever reason garrisons count as combat units when you buy them then, but I don't know, you don't have a combat unit supply later on in the turn or later on in the year in other turns. So I'm guessing I can spend it. I don't know. I just don't understand, you know? But I'm allowing just pure money anytime except in the spring interphase when it will take up manpower. What it kind of means is that you just don't have your garrisons available right away. I'm not terribly upset with that. I also, you know, Spain might be out of the war or whatever, but England will be back in. This is the dreaded winter quarters, so the turn is over. I'm going to wait to finish up the turn because there's going to be at least a couple of conquests. Genoa and Piedmont are going to fall. And yeah, then we're moving into the last turn of this scenario. And it looks really tough for France to win. But if I can get Flanders, I can make it so neither side wins at least, which might not be too terrible a result. Okay, let's take a look at the conquests. First of all, minor countries has to be winter phase. This is just so weird to me, but which is why we couldn't have Austria surrender and stuff like that. But what changed hands? Let's start over here and see what we got. Nothing's changing over here. The French are still holding Wesel, but aren't in Frankfurt. Lorraine, not going to count for the for the French for money. Same thing here with the Champagne, not going to count. But no biggie there. Palatinate. That is conquered by Austria. Let me just check its status here. It was part of Baden. I'm not quite sure what happens with it. Oh, it has been incorporated into French territory. So yeah, it's just not going to produce. Baden itself, though, is going to switch sides. And take this off and replace, move the Baden marker out of France and back to Austria. If there was a Baden core out, it would switch hands. But this goes over to the Austrian pool to build. Okay, to the Italians. Genoa and Piedmont are both GE, so they're both absorbed into France. Now, I don't know what their situation is here. I feel like they're both nations, right? I mean, Piedmont obviously is. But it owned something, didn't it? Well, if it did, it would, I don't know what it would be. Okay. Genoa and Piedmont. Genoa is an Austrian ally without troops. Okay. So those both get absorbed into French territory. Lombardy, I don't have enough. I need to take Mantua to get it. And Napoleon can't do that, so there we go. It has no troops. Piedmont does have troops, and it has a leader, which will all be removed. Not sure the leader should actually be removed. Like, part of me feels like, I don't know the history, so, you know, of Coley or whatever. Kind of feels, though, like they would still have some sort of alliance to any coalition against France. But without any troops or anything, maybe relegated to such a minor role that they wouldn't actually be given a real command in the Austrian army. So it's fair to remove them and leave them alive in case somehow Piedmont gets reestablished. It will not. He will not fight for like the Kingdom of Italy. Now, I have to look up the Kingdom of Italy, though. I don't remember where these are. I'll be back. I found Kingdom of Italy. It's just Lombardy, Romagna, and Venetia. So, not an issue there. I don't think anything else is going to take place here. We don't have any automatic victories or anything. So this is the end of 1796. Put this guy somewhere. And I guess we're ready to load things up. Overall view, I don't think France has a chance of winning, despite their attempt to get some of the Italian states back or under their control. And what was Lombardy's? Oh, Lombardy is, it doesn't matter because it wasn't conquered. But Lombardy is a minor ally to Austria without any troops. Which is kind of weird because that means if I do conquer it, I could, instead of, I don't know what I need to create the Kingdom of Italy. I was just there, and now I can't, oh, it's in this other book. Fucking annoying. And Rhine is Berg, Cleves, and Thuringia. And all we have of that is Cleves. Okay. I think we could create it with just one, but I'm not positive. See, it says, in the winter campaign, these major powers may, if they or their allies are in possession of specific provinces, use them to create new states. But then it says may here. Okay, so here it's Lombardy has to be taken for Kingdom of Italy. Let's see what we got. I don't know. I'm just going to leave Berg as part of France. You know, creating French units is worth more. So a tiny, tiny little Berg on its own doesn't have any manpower. There's no reason to create a nation out of it because, or a confederation of the Rhine, because the money can't be used for anything, but the money goes to France otherwise. The big question is whether or not miners are worth it otherwise. And I think they are if they start adding manpower, because then you can create extra units and you have a bigger force pool. So all of that kind of goes together. Poland is still Poland, even though the partition should have happened already. Prussia and Russia apparently are not dividing it up while it's at war with Austria for whatever reason. Maybe they're happy to see that, but honestly, I think it's really unlikely. I think the partition would happen anyway. Or if it didn't, they would be worried. Like, if it weren't to happen, Prussia and Russia would be worried that Austria might conquer Poland. But honestly, this kind of situation feels like it would kind of fall into a realignment, you know. Under these circumstances, it just doesn't work. Like, I don't think Poland should be allowed to fight in this. Certainly not in this circumstance that we're looking at, but that would require a different kind of complexity to the rules than there is. All right, we'll load this up. I'm really struggling with where the rules kind of grate together incorrectly. And honestly, I don't think errata is enough to save this. Like, I haven't looked. The idea of reading, you know, a whole rewrite of the rules that includes the errata on PDF is just beyond me, and it really is a rewrite. It's not something that you can just go to and try to find what's fixed. Now, maybe some of these answers were put there. There is no actual errata for the game that I'm aware of, like, that's just collated in one place where you can just go in and fix, you know, write up fixes. I didn't see it on BGG, and my guess is it's spread out through all kinds of places with questions, some of which may just, you know, I get the feeling a lot of the time when a designer answers questions like that, they're making a decision on the fly, and it's not necessarily going to solve all the issues and everything. So unless there's like a published set of errata, I don't really trust the answers they give. I've seen too many where I'm not happy with those answers. I don't feel like they really get to the core of it all. Sometimes it's like, yeah, it's written that way. That's how it's played. Okay. Don't you see the problem? No. All right. All right. We'll be back for the economics of the last turn of this game, and I'm just delaying because I don't know. Yeah. I know that I don't have anything I want to do right now once I go downstairs and start loading this. Right side of that is, or the weird part of it is, when there are things that I should be doing, like it's just too warm for me to want to, then I'm like, it's really easy for me to find something to distract myself. But right now, the distractions don't sound good.